The dissent really seems like.
What's good? What's good? Thomas here. Going to talk about Roe v. Wade real quick. Pop up live. Big decision. No, not really a surprise at this point, and that's probably the bigger story. But let's hear what CBS. CBS is probably the best out of the corporate media, in my opinion. I would probably go to CBS as my number one still to this day. Not that they're great, but I think they are one of the better corporate media outlets. Let's see what they're saying.
They have the right and the dissent talk about the importance of respect for the institution. And it's interesting that the majority says, I've gone through all of the factors of stare decisis, but now I have to talk to you about one more thing. And that one more thing is respect for the court. And what the majority really says here is you're not going to have a court that's respected if they just create and or uphold rights that have no grounding in this country's history, have no grounding in this country's tradition, no grounding in this country's case law. And so both sides were trying to pick up the mantle of this decision is the one that actually will be the decision that gets the court to find more favor in the eyes of the public, or that allows the court to be seen as more respected. Obviously, the country is so divided on this issue that really, I think this all just comes down to what is your view of abortion, not what is your view of stare decisis.
Yeah, that is fascinating. We're listening to Jessica Levinson. President Biden, we expect to make his remarks on the Supreme Court ruling in just over 30 minutes from now. We also have some new video just into CBS News showing some of the reaction to this decision by House staffers, some of them walking from Congress, marching across to where the Supreme Court is now to protest this decision. I guess the video is not exactly queued up.
There you go.
You can see now men and women walking from the House. These are staffers. You know, Supreme Court's right next to Congress there. It's not a long walk, but certainly showing their displeasure to this decision in their small way, as many across the country will be doing.
Yeah, joining the other protesters.
What I don't like about corporate media is that they don't call out that this type of protest is, it's very American. And the one thing that's never called out about J6 is that those who went to the Capitol peacefully were peaceful protesters. Here they're celebrated. I know this is stuff that many people, I'm kind of hearing an echo, but hopefully you're not, that many people already understand and know. But that's when you look at corporate media and why I don't trust corporate media, you don't have to look far. Give us context that this is an American as apple pie. And that's the same with J6. What happened was American as apple pie. And then what we have to look at this here is they are corporate. This is on the side of corporate America, just like Black Lives Matter and Ukraine. So if you're in DC and you're protesting on the side of the corporate politicians, you're going to be in a large part okay. If you are a non-corporate type of person on whatever issue that is, because I will agree with corporate issues on some things and disagree on others. Like J6, I was on the side of the people there. But you have to understand, you are against the corporate interests, and you are in a corporate-controlled territory. You don't have home court advantage. You don't have home field advantage. They have home field advantage. Do not look at what they're doing and say, well, I can do it too. No, you can't. Not there.
There's no doubt in front of the Supreme Court. But, you know, we spoke to Major Garrett, and he said, as far as demonstrations go in front of the Supreme Court, it's actually not as large as others. He didn't mention this, but I wouldn't be surprised if part of that reason is because we saw the leaked draft.
Right.
I mean, people essentially knew that it was going to go this way. There was maybe a feeling that perhaps the language would be tweaked, but that.
No, there wasn't. There was no feeling about that. They're not tweaking the language off of an unprecedented leak that we've never seen a leak like the one that we saw here. They're not changing the language based on that. The court is based on nothing but faith. Just like I talked about election integrity and took it to a broader topic of any government action. It's only built on faith. So if you change it based on an illegitimate leak to threaten the authority of the court, and we literally saw threaten the lives of Supreme Court justices, and we saw that in the case of Kavanaugh, you can't change based on that. Even if you wanted to, you can't.
That certainly wasn't the case. It seems like the majority decision was exactly what was leaked.
And that's its
before.
own story.
And I said they should have, after the leak, they should have came out the next day with the decision. I don't know why they had to wait so long. It was already written up. I don't know the ins and outs. I'm not a lawyer, not an expert, but as soon as possible after the leak, it should have came out. I think they waited too long. So they put themselves in danger. Kavanaugh, all the justices. If I was a justice on the Supreme Court, I would have said that decision has to come down the next day we can do it, period. We're gonna have to work overnight or whatever. Otherwise, we're blowing this whole thing up. Like not physically, I'm saying not really, figuratively, I'm coming out and speaking against this. Like if I'm Kavanaugh or somebody like that. I'm taking this whole thing and I'm taking the legitimacy of this court down if we don't come out the next day. So that was a big mistake. It should have came out a lot sooner.
Who leaked it? Why?
Yeah,
Was it
yeah.
because of this or for another reason? We just want to, in our last few minutes, also show you reaction from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who had this to say moments ago.
So Nathaniel said in the chat,
They're supermajority in the Supreme Court. American women today have less freedom than their mothers. With Roe and their attempt to destroy it, radical...
I do agree with that. Women do have less freedoms. We can talk about that more later, but what she started off with here, at least that first statement, I do agree with that.
Republican Party, they're supermajority in the Supreme Court. American women today have less freedom than their mothers. With Roe and their attempt to destroy it, radical Republicans are charging ahead with their crusade to...
So now she's in the BS about radical Republicans. Both sides do this, radical Democrats, radical Republicans. If you're having a discussion with somebody about this, a lot of people don't even know what happened. That's why I titled the video, it's a win for federalism. Federalism is it's not complicated, but it's kind of a confusing label. Because you have the word federal in it, you think maybe it means federal power. What it really means is balance of power between individual bodies and the bigger union. And that's so if you talk to somebody, and some people are heated about this, that's fine. Respect where you're coming from. But what the Supreme Court did, all they did was say, this decision is explicitly given. You're not explicitly given rights to it in the Constitution. Therefore, it must be left up to the states. That's literally all they did. We look at these Supreme Court justices and we almost treat them like experts or gods. And they are obviously legal experts, but these issues are not complicated to understand at its fundamental level. What they did with the Second Amendment in that case yesterday, fundamental stuff. It's not, I mean, it's like 1 + 1 is 2. It's really not complicated once you look into it. There is no protection specifically enough on abortion in the Constitution. And I actually agree that it should be a woman's choice. I don't personally support that choice being done in my life, but if you want to do that, you do you. So the first conversation is all the Supreme Court did was leave it up to the states. We got to understand that first before we even have any discussion. Is that the right thing or wrong thing to do? Obviously, that's the right thing to do. Obviously, it was. There is no protected right to abortion in the Constitution, specifically enough. There's enough disagreement on it. It's not like 2A, where it literally says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It literally says that in the Constitution. So there's nothing that says that the equivalent of abortion. If it said abortion in the Constitution, during their times, they would have never imagined. I don't think that this would have been a topic like this, but life changes. That it has to be left up to the states. So stop. If we're talking about that, I need to pause and make sure you understand that. I know a lot of people are breathing heavily out of this, women concerned, and I don't blame you, but that's where we have to pause. Is that the right or wrong decision? Yes, that is the right decision, clearly. So if you have a problem with the state you're in, you take it up with the state. I don't know why you are at the Supreme Court right now, outside the court right now, protesting them. If you're doing that, you are literally being used as a tool of the Nancy Pelosi's and Bill Barrs and others who want power with the federal government. They don't care about your body. Do you think Nancy Pelosi cares about your body? You don't know her. You don't know her psychology if you think she cares about your body, whether you're a Democrat or not. She cares about money and power. That's what she cares about. That's the currency. And this issue is the same as when she put on the kente cloth after George Floyd. It's like, okay, this ideology or this moment helps me with power, so I'll put on the kente cloth. She doesn't give a damn about anything else. So if you're out there federally, now if you go to your state and protest, then that makes more sense because now it's up to your state. And what I would say is where you live matters. If you're born in China, you don't have free speech. If you're born in America, you're hanging on to maybe a little bit by a thread, but you've got different rights. If you're born in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Canada, Mexico, the Prime Minister of Canada just said, you can't have guns for self-defense. That ain't a thing. He said that. So if you're born in Canada, then your life is different than if you're born in America. If you're born in Texas, your life is different than if you're born in California. That's life. So if you want to politically fight to change that, then fine. I have no problem with you. But if you complain about what Texas is doing and you live in California, I need you to stop trying to exert power over other people. Let people in Texas fight that battle politically. This is not a bad thing. We don't all agree on it. This is I don't know if compromise is the right term, but this is how we should proceed if we want to be a union. Now, if you don't want to be a union, I'm willing to have that conversation as well. Thanks for joining the chat. We're talking about abortion, obviously. Roe v. Wade has been struck down. It's bad law, bad case, bad law.
Criminalize health freedom. In the Congress,
Nancy,
be aware of this. The Republicans are plotting a nationwide abortion ban. They cannot be allowed to have a majority in the Congress to do that. But that's their goal. And if you read, and again, we're all studying all this, but if you read what is in the very clear, one of the justices had his own statement. It's about contraception, in vitro fertilization, family planning. That is all what will spring from there.
So this is the tactic of rushing to fear the next thing that they will do. I don't know. I'm not knowledgeable enough on the take from this. I would call this a religious authoritarianism in a way. If you want to go to, and these are people I respect, but we disagree on this. Nick Fuentes would say we want the federal government to come out and ban it. That's religious authoritarianism. Bryson Gray would want that as well. Nothing against them, but that's not for me. So now they're going to the next. Here's what you should be afraid of, because there's nothing you can do about this ruling. So using fear as a tactic.
Decision.
speaks to the real emotional weight of the moment.
Yeah, you know, this conversation is going to be going.
A great comment here. Thank you. Angel's Army says, you are right. They should have done it the next day, just like how Nati should have approved the extra help at the U.S. Capitol when Trump was in office, but she never did. Yes, and it looks like there are pro-MAGA or Republicans who are looking into that. The ones who did not get on the J6 committee, I think that was the first time that's ever happened before, where the minority leader was not able to appoint who they wanted to on a bipartisan committee.
Going on and on and on. There's a lot to talk about, not just about the decision, but about the trigger laws, and the real world impact, Errol, of what this decision is going to make. If you are just joining us and you don't know about this, this is a Supreme Court decision which overturns Roe v. Wade in a 6-3 split. And we are talking about, you know, overturning 50 years of precedent here. And there are a number of trigger laws already in place across the country. Some of them would go into place immediately. Others, it might take a month or so, but we're talking about drastically changing the landscape in this country when it comes to abortion access. So there's a lot more to cover here, of course. We are going to be taking a little bit of a break. Michelle Miller is going to be joining us after the break as well.
My sincerest thanks to Rebecca Royfee here with us and Jessica Levinson as the sole man, a part of this group. I'm so fortunate. Your insight was really enlightening, and I thank you all so much for being a part of what is a historic day in America. I'm Errol Barnett here with Anne-Marie Green. Our coverage of this breaking news event and President Biden speaking in about 30 minutes continues after this short break.
Well, it is clearly historic.
So if we had a serious leader in this country, I don't know if that would happen on, you know, if DeSantis was president or Rand Paul or Comic Dave Smith. I'd be curious what Comic Dave Smith, his speech to America right now would be. I'm thinking it could be along the lines, what I'm saying is, I think we need to create an environment where we respect each other and respect our differences. So that obviously Joe Biden's not going to come out and say that, but if we had a real authentic leader, isn't that what we would say? Wouldn't we say this decision leaves it up to the states and there are people who don't agree with abortion and it's a strong topic for both, and this is the best way for us to go forward as a country? I think that's the message you would have. I would be very upfront and say where you live matters. If you don't agree with this and you live in a state like Texas or Alabama, I don't know all the state laws. That's the next level, is to go into, each state's going to have a little different variation. But if you live in one of those states or whatever side you're on, you don't agree with it, where you live matters. And what I would recommend is, if it's that much of an issue, is to be able to work hard. This is a great country. And if you prioritize something, then you can make it happen to move to a state that more aligns with your views. That goes for 2A. I mean, really 2A should be the same everywhere, but it's not. So it does apply to 2A. It applies to abortion and anything. For me, it applies to culture. New York has a state. My son and I were talking about the Statue of Liberty. He brought it up because he has a map. And, you know, in New York on the map, the picture is the Statue of Liberty. He's talking about the Statue of Liberty. He's like, Daddy, when are we going to go see the Statue of Liberty? It was kind of like the discussion where he said, when are we going to go see China? And I had the discussion I was very upfront with him and saying, I don't foresee myself ever going to China. I think it's a beautiful country from what I've seen online. I like the culture. I respect Chinese people. This is literally what I talked to him about. But not every country allows you to speak freely. And I have said things against the Chinese government that would put me in a position of endangerment. I would never go to China. And it's the same with New York. I mean, I might have to at some point or whatever, but I'm not going to be making vacation plans. And I've already talked to my wife, and it ain't happening. So that matters. That's how important this stuff is. And when you don't create an atmosphere of, that's why I really like Daily Wire. You might think I'm crazy bringing up Daily Wire in regards to this. Daily Wire, where I got the Jeremy Razors, I don't have them down here with me, but they're really good. I think they are the equivalent of Harry's. Blind testing, I would say they're about the same. But my point is, Daily Wire says, they come out and they say, you know what? You might not agree with us, but the reason why we created our own razors is they're just damn razors. So we don't hate you if you disagree with us. Just buy the razors. And they came out with the legendary ad. I think instant classic ad by Jeremy Boring. Talking, and that really just annihilated that whole, you have to agree with us, or they're razors, just buy them. And my point is, if you don't create an atmosphere, like New York has not created an atmosphere that says, hey, come through our state, whether you're MAGA or not, we still love you, even though we disagree. That's not the position from Kathy Hochul. And to me, I take that very seriously. I'm not putting myself in danger going to a state that openly hates me because I don't subscribe to their religion. Ain't happening. So we have to have those discussions. And then a real leader would say, why don't we just open things up from the standpoint of, this is our position, we respect you, we disagree, but come together. That's what happened with Disney. That's what's happening. Eric July has been talking about this for years. That's what happened with Disney and Lightyear, the Buzz Lightyear movie. Nobody cares about a same-sex kiss. They don't care. So they try to pass it off as maybe hate, bigot, what's his name, Chris Evans, whoever, the actor. They replaced Tim Allen because Tim Allen is a well-known conservative. That's not about, so you replacing Tim Allen is not about, they didn't say that, but that's the impression I get. It's the same thing that comes down to these cultural issues like abortion. So you don't respect Tim Allen because he's not going to go out there and promote the movie like Chris Evans did and basically say you're a bigot if you don't enjoy this. So what they do is they take politics. It started from the Don't Say Gay bill. They take that political position and then they attach it to an ideology and say, because of this Don't Say Gay bill, we're going to give you more representation. And they take a movie like Toy Story, which never was about that, and they use it as a vehicle because they know people like the Toy Story brand. No different than Superman. They say Superman is here. He has a son. Let's give him the same cape, the S on his chest. So it's not like we're taking the exact Superman, but we're taking the branding and we make him bisexual. If you really had respect for representation, which I have no problem with representation, you would create a new property and then say, this representation doesn't mean I hate you. We can like each other. That's what Disney would do. And the same thing's happening to our country right now. We're not taking this abortion issue, and both sides, the religious side is less aggressive, in my opinion, as far as discussing the topic. They are aggressive in banning abortion. That's aggression. But when you discuss the topic, the position from the religious side or the side that is against abortion, it's usually not, I hate you. But from the other side, it's clearly hate. And that has to, if we can't come, you can't legislate that. You can't legislate respect for each other. And if we can't come to that point, that's why I say we got to break it apart. That's why the what is a woman matters. That's why the Buzz Lightyear matters. People were saying, oh, Joe Biden, one of his best lines recently was he was like, Republicans or Ultra MAGA or whoever are attacking Mickey Mouse now. That was probably his best line of any speech of his presidency because it was kind of funny. It's like, that's kind of true. But it matters. He's trying to deflect from how those cultural issues actually matter in reality. So I think Biden's going to speak soon, so I'll play that when that happens.
This decision has not changed in its critical respects. So all of these protests did not succeed. In fact, what we thought was happening did happen. It's clear that the Chief Justice was trying to peel off a colleague. He admits that, or states in his concurrence, that he would have liked to simply get rid of part of the Roe-Casey line of cases dealing with viability, but not overturn the cases entirely. Kavanaugh's concurrence, however, amplifies what the majority is saying. He wants to.
Great comment. I just saw, have to interrupt it. P. Vince says it exactly how I feel. Representation is great. And I think in a large part, nobody has a problem with that as long as it doesn't cross the line. Because the Buzz Lightyear, I haven't seen it. And I probably won't see it. My impression is it's just like a quick kiss between two wives, and they have a child. I think in a large part, I have no problem with that. That's not a huge issue. Now, would I bring my kids to that? That's a different topic. No, I'm not bringing my kids to that because of the larger issues I'm talking about. But nobody really has a problem with them doing that, I don't think. So representation is great, but you got tokenism. So you use somebody as a token, and not just as a token, like as a token to get across some type of political viewpoint, as a smack in the face to people you disagree with politically. So it's tokenism to a high level. Because when I grew up, tokenism was, every show had that one black character. And the black character wasn't really used to get across like Black Lives Matter or something like that. Obviously, that didn't exist in the 90s. But it was just to have representation as a token. But now we're doing like symbolism and tokenism to another degree. And I agree, that is bad. There is a difference. Disney and the larger companies don't understand the difference. Either they don't understand, or it's more likely that they have bad intent. So we're in a new era. Back in the day, companies never would take stances like this, especially because there's no demand. So we are in a new era when people talk about communism and socialism. This is evidence of that. When you try to force something into a market where there is no demand, I talked about the trans cheerleader, and I don't have anything. You have to always explain yourself. I think you have to, because people will clip it and say you're a bigot and you're hate. I have no hate for anybody. I want people to be put in a position of success. And I don't know if there was a huge demand for a transgender cheerleader. So are you putting her in a position of success? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was demand, or maybe she will be a trendsetter, and I will clap and applaud that if that's the case. But obviously with this Buzz Lightyear, I think the market has spoken. Who knows? We don't know that for sure, but there was no demand. So when you don't have demand and you have a company trying to force it on you, like if you think this is an ugly workout shirt and the company makes nothing but shirts that look like this, you're forcing demand onto people, and people aren't going to buy it. And that leads us towards some type of centralization where Disney would want to push to force people to buy it, because how you would do that is saturate the market where every single thing has this same representation. So if you want the entertainment, you got to go there. That's against American values. It will be very hard to force people to do that. They'll go to sources on the internet. They'll go to Rumble. Daily Wire said they were going to do a kids division. Bishop says companies like Disney understand, they just don't care about the consumer. Yeah, and the agendas now are out in the open. And what they're concerned about is MAGA. And what that means is the people. They're concerned about an uprising from the people, and that is anti-corporatism. MAGA is anti-corporate. I don't think in every case, because I even heard Marjorie Taylor Greene speak glowingly of Tesla. So it's like, obviously I'm not anti-corporate, but I'm anti-corporatism, which is the idea that the corporate interests rule over the people. So if MAGA rises up, that hurts corporations. I think that hurts them long term, and that's why they've jumped into this fray to say we've got to back the people that we've been dishing out this money to through super PACs and all these different things, so they still get power. People are kind of rising on up. We don't want that to happen. That's why they're against Roe v. Wade. It fits the topic. They are against this because you break down the federal government doesn't have power to tell a state whether this is illegal or legal. Now that means power is closer with people. They don't like that. If you do that with Roe v. Wade, you can do that with a lot of other things. I think that's the true concern.
Peace out, y'all.
So let me see if they have anything going back on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS.
Okay, they're still on break. So, they're coming back. Let's see if Biden's going to be speaking. No, they're doing their promos. So thanks for joining. We'll go through some comments here. Women say my body, my choice. I agree with that. The thing that I would talk to Bryson Gray and others about on the other side of this is, I've mentioned this before. The honest conversation that we need to have is that an infant, an unborn person or unborn living thing inside the womb of a mother is not a human life. It's literally not the definition of a human life. It is a parasite, period. That is a factual statement. It is a parasite. It is not something that can live on its own. So I understand you're carrying on that. I agree with you in my personal life that aborting, because my take really goes all the way up until 9 months, up until birth. And that's a terrible thought to think about. So I want to change the culture so we respect and people feel supported enough if something happens accidentally that they can have an abortion. I want to change that culturally. That can't be legislated. The authoritarian religious faction of our country wants to legislate that, and that's wrong. I'm sounding very harsh here. I don't know what my vocabulary is failing me here, but the creature inside of a mother is a parasite. Period. Definition of a parasite. Let me see if I can. An organism that lives and feeds on or in an organism of a different species and causes harm to its host. One who habitually takes advantage of generosity to others without making useful returns. So that definition is, I think I've brought this up before, where they said of a different species. Why is that distinguished? Why are we distinguishing that? That's not. I just have a feeling that's one of those shady things. I would like to look through the history. That's through American Heritage. I don't agree with that definition. I go through dictionary.com. They say an animal or plant that lives in or on another, the host from which it obtains nourishment. So it makes you wonder why they would do that. Why these definitions, that seems shady to me. Let me bring this up and show you. I don't know for sure. It's just weird, isn't it? So I just searched this on DuckDuckGo, and the first definition of parasite that came up, if you can see this, let me make it bigger, is an organism that lives and feeds on or in an organism. So one organism lives and feeds on or in an organism. Then all of a sudden we have of a different species. Why is that there? Why would you need to distinguish a different species there? The only thing that could come to mind is to distinguish from a human organism in another human organism. or a baby lion and a mother lion, and causes harm to its host. I'm sorry, that's a BS definition. That's just complete garbage to me. There's no reason. Why would you need to distinguish a different species? So I'm going to now dictionary.com. I've done this before, but I think it's worth doing again. Who knows who saw when I did it before? An organism that lives on or in an organism of another species. Again, let me see. See, then over here, that is weird. See, when I look at the definition just straight from the preview of the website, it says parasite. Noun, an animal or plant that lives in or on another, the host, from which it obtains nourishment, period. That is a human inside of a mother's womb. It fits the definition of a parasite. I click the link, and then now it says of another species. Why is that? Why would you need to distinguish that? I know it might sound harsh, but it is a fact. A human organism in a mother's womb is a parasite. It lives in and lives off the mother. That is not a human, that's not a being that can exist by itself. Even when it gets to the point in the mother that it could live by itself or with medical support live, it can't get outside the mother without being extracted, without force. That's a parasite. All the way up until it comes out of the mother, it is a parasite. Period. So I know you want to sound righteous and say it's a life form, it's got a beating heart. The fact is, it can't live without the mother. So for you to legislate the mother having to make a decision about a parasite in its body is just absolute authoritarianism, period. But I'm not going to be red-pilled here. We have to have a real discussion about this. I am still white-pilled because I care about where do the rights come from. And I know libertarians have come at me because I said the state rights. I said this ruling gives the states rights, and especially libertarians and anyone would say, hey, the state doesn't give anybody rights. Humans have rights. But can you tell that to people who are locked up in federal prison for J6? Do they have rights? They should have rights, but the federal government said we have the rights to lock your ass up. So I have to think through that. I'm not as well read. I know these are God-given rights, but you can say they're God-given rights, but you can get hemmed up for violating what should be God-given rights. If you do the wrong thing with a gun in New York, you're locked up. So you might say I have a God-given right, but maybe pray to God, but you'll be in the jail cell while you do it. So I have to think through my thoughts on that. Yes, casual goats. Yes, they were parasites when they were inside of my wife's womb. Yes. Once you are outside of the womb, however that happens, they have rights at that moment to me. But you can't forcefully extract them from somebody. That I will never agree with force. So for me in my personal life, I would never want somebody I'm with, a woman that I'm with or not with, that had my child in her to have an abortion. But we have to understand that's your life. You can't legislate that. That's a force. It's literally an act of force. There's a parasite in the woman, and you're saying the woman can't do what she wants to do with the parasite, period. And then you say the parasite can live, so how do you get it out of the mom? You would have to force it out if she didn't want it out. If she agreed to have it come out and then be adopted and taken care of, then fine. Anything else would be a use of force. So we have to have an honest discussion about that. It's living off literally through the umbilical cord. It's living off of the mother. It's not a human that has rights outside of the womb. No, they can't. Well, no, that's a different, that they're not physically attached to you. So this is a comment. Let me read the comment. My 6, 3, and 1-year-old cannot survive without me. So by your thinking, they're parasites to me and my wife. No. The definition of parasite that lives in or on another. That's not your 6, 3, and 1-year-olds do not literally, when it says live on another, it means literally attached to you. Like, I don't know, would you call a tick a parasite? I don't know what parasite I'm not a biologist or anything like that. But the definition is, so this definition obviously got changed. But this is the definition that I have. People can disagree. But my kids are 3 and 5. No, they're not parasites. They're not attached to me physically, and they're not on me or my wife physically. So no, they're not parasites at that point. Could they survive on their own? No. But that doesn't mean they're a parasite, though. They still have rights now. A child, a parasite within a mother's womb does not have rights legally. You have to be able to separate your personal. I agree with you personally. We have to be able to look at these things from a personal standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, and what should be legislated. I don't care how righteous you think it is, that should not be legislated upon anyone else. That is an act of force, period. We have to be real about that. I agree. I do not. Karen says referring to a fetus as a parasite sounds so dehumanizing. For me, in my personal life, and I'm thinking about the law. The law is dehumanizing. The law is very black and white. And what we're seeing here is people on the left very often don't like the black and white of the law. That's why they say critical justice, critical theory. None of it based on facts and truth, because facts and truth are very apathetic to your feelings. They're very harsh. I'm not talking. So personally, I agree with you. I never called my kids in my wife's womb parasites, but I'm talking about legally. We're talking about people trying to legislate power over somebody else. So in the legal sense, no emotions, it's a parasite. The law isn't a person, so it's not like the law should have emotions, period. So we have to understand that, and we can promote groups that make sure that women, young women, and women of any age feel like they have support. It's up to the father of the child to make sure that that woman knows, I'm going to be with you or I will support you. You can't legislate that. But that's where I think you shift the culture to say you can do this, or you can put it up for adoption or whatever else the case is. But we have to be, when we talk about the legality of something, we got to be 100. We got to keep it 100. We can't be bringing religion into that. We can't. That's not religion is faith. So unless you want a theocracy, and some people do, I'm just not. And keep in mind, it's just one topic. So if I had to choose the authoritarian religious right or the authoritarian religious left that believes in critical theory and all that other stuff, I think I'm choosing the right if I had to choose. And the right is not very authoritarian in many areas. This is one where some are. If you think this should be federally decided to make abortion illegal, you are on that topic an authoritarian, pro-authoritarian. You could say they're parasitic. That's kind of like people are saying the J6 was insurrectionist or insurrection-y. No, it's either, I think there's no middle on this one. Yeah, I mean, if you're saying parasitic as in they're a parasite, then yeah, I would agree. And I know that sounds cold. That's not what, I don't want to sound cold, but when you look at the legality of something, you can't take religion, you can take your morals into account. I understand that, but we have to factually analyze What is this thing? And I am very much against the use of force. That's how things fall apart. But I have no problem. If you are in a state that says, no, we don't view it as a parasite, it's a life form, I have no problem with that. You have to decide as a person, are you going to live there? People say, well, it takes so much money, you can't move or whatever. Okay, well, that's life. People who are born in Ghana, they might not be able to go to another country, and they have different things they have to overcome or not overcome. I'm done coddling people. If you live in a state that believes abortion should be outlawed, that's life. That's just where you were born, and you got to deal with it. Same with if you live in a state where people think abortion should be legal all the way up to that moment before the head comes out. That's life. You can try to change it politically, but that is where you were born. Either embrace it or not. Everybody in the state's not going to agree with everything. Got to pick our battles. How important is that to you? And I think it is inconsistent if you are against the V for Vendetta mandates, but you are for controlling a woman decision over what I refer to as legally as a parasite. So I think that's the type of discussion we're not having that type of discussion now. I mean, nobody really comes out and says, this is the black and white of the issue. Take all the emotion out of it. Let's start here. But I think we can both agree to disagree. Farron Khan says, I think the SCOTUS decision is the best thing. American society cannot survive so divided. Each person go live in the state you want to and then shut up. More federalism is urgently needed. Yes. And I view, maybe this definition is off, but the way I view federalism is the balance between what we have here as states, just as it pertains to America, the balance of power between the states and the federal government. So we have to decide on any issue, where does that go? So it looks like Biden is delivering remarks. I'm going to hop on over there. Let's hear this is our leader. So in this moment, what does a leader do? Does a leader divide us or bring us together? Whoops. I think I'm going to have an echo. Hold on one second. We're going to share the screen. Let's hear from our leader, the leader of the free world, the commander-in-chief. I hope he got a tricycle, but here we go.
And it reinforced a fundamental right of privacy.
I'm going to back it up here. I don't know where. I want to see where he started. Okay,
Biden, who will make his first remarks since the monumental decision this morning from the Supreme Court that overturned Roe versus Wade, eliminating the constitutional right to abortion. Here's the president.
It's not hyperbole to suggest a very solemn moment. Today, the Supreme Court of the United States,
I'm going to try not to stop this,
expressly took away a constitutional right from the American people that it had already recognized. They didn't limit it, they simply took it away. That's never been done to a right so important to so many Americans. But they did it. It's a sad day for the court and for the country. 50 years ago, Roe v. Wade was decided and has been the law of the land since then. This landmark case protected a woman's right to choose, her right to make intensely personal decisions with her doctor, free from the interference of politics. It reaffirmed basic principles of equality, that women have the power to control their own destiny, and it reinforced a fundamental right of privacy, a right of each of us to choose how to live our lives. Now, with Roe gone, let's be very clear. The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. As chairman and ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, as vice president and now as president of the United States, I've studied this case carefully. I've overseen more Supreme Court confirmations than anyone today, where this case was always discussed. I believe Roe v. Wade was the correct decision as a matter of constitutional law and application of the fundamental right to privacy and liberty in matters of family and personal autonomy. It was a decision on a complex matter that drew a careful balance between a woman's right to choose earlier in her pregnancy and the state's ability to regulate later in her pregnancy. A decision with broad national consensus that most Americans of faith and backgrounds found acceptable, that have been the law of the land for most of the lifetime of Americans today. And it was a constitutional principle upheld by justices appointed by Democrat and Republican presidents alike. Roe v. Wade was a 7-2 decision written by a justice appointed by a Republican president, Richard Nixon. In the 5 decades that followed Roe v. Wade, justices appointed by Republican presidents from Eisenhower, Nixon, and Reagan, George W. Bush, were among the justices who voted to uphold the principles set forth in Roe v. Wade. It was 3 justices named by one president, Donald Trump, who were the core of today's decision to upend the scales of justice and eliminate a fundamental right for women in this country. Make no mistake, this decision is a culmination of a deliberate effort over decades to upset the balance of our law. It's a realization of an extreme ideology and a tragic error by the Supreme Court, in my view. The court has done what it has never done before, expressly take away a constitutional right that is so fundamental to so many Americans that had already been recognized. The court's decision to do so will have real and immediate consequences. State laws banning abortion are automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women, some without exceptions. So extreme that women could be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls who are forced to bear their rapist's child, with the child a consequence. It just stuns me. So extreme that doctors will be criminalized for fulfilling their duty to care. Imagine having a young woman have to carry the child of incest as a consequence of incest. No option. Too often the case. The poor women are going to be hit the hardest. It's cruel. In fact, the court laid out state laws criminalizing abortion that go back to the 1800s as rationale. The court literally taking America back 150 years. This is a sad day for the country, in my view. But it doesn't mean the fight's over. Let me be very clear and unambiguous. The only way we can secure a woman's right to choose, and the balance that existed, is for Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade as federal law. No executive action from the president can do that. And if Congress, as it appears, lacks the votes to do that now, voters need to make their voices heard. This fall, we must elect more senators and representatives who will codify women's right to choose into federal law once again. Elect more state leaders to protect this right at the local level. We need to restore the protections of Roe as law of the land. We need to elect officials who will do that. This fall, Roe is on the ballot. Personal freedoms are on the ballot. The right to privacy, liberty, equality, they're all on the ballot. Until then, I will do all of my power to protect a woman's right in states where they will face the consequences of today's decision. While the court's decision cast a dark shadow over a large swath of the land, many states in this country still recognize a woman's right to choose. So, if a woman lives in a state that restricts abortion, The Supreme Court's decision does not prevent her from traveling from her home state to the state that allows it. It does not prevent a doctor in that state from treating her. As the Attorney General has made clear, women must remain free to travel safely to another state to seek care they need. My administration will defend that bedrock right. If any state or local official, high or low, tries to interfere with a woman's exercising her basic right to travel, I will do everything in my power to fight that deeply un-American attack. My administration will also protect a woman's access to medications that are approved by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, like contraception, which is essential for preventative health care, mifepristone, which the FDA approved 20 years ago to safely end early pregnancies and is commonly used to treat miscarriages. Some states are saying that they'll try to ban or severely restrict access to these medications. But extremist governors and state legislators are looking to block the mail or search a person's medicine cabinet or control a woman's actions by tracking data on her apps she uses are wrong and extreme and out of touch with the majority of Americans. The American Medical Association, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists wrote to me and Vice President Harris stressing that these laws are not based on evidence and asking us to act to protect access to care. They say by limiting access to these medicines, maternal mortality will climb in America. That's what they say. Today, I'm directing the Department of Health and Human Services to take steps to ensure these critical medications are available to the fullest extent possible. And the politicians cannot interfere in the decisions that should be made between a woman and her doctor. And my administration will remain vigilant as the implications of this decision play out. I've warned about how this decision risks the broader right to privacy for everyone. That's because Roe recognized the fundamental right to privacy that has served as a basis for so many more rights that we've come to take for granted, that are ingrained in the fabric of this country. The right to make the best decisions for your health. The right to use birth control, a married couple in the privacy of their bedroom, for God's sake. The right to marry the person you love. Now, Justice Thomas said as much today. He explicitly called to reconsider the right of marriage equality, the right of couples to make their choices on contraception. This is an extreme and dangerous path the court is now taking us on. Let me close with 2 points. First, I call on everyone, no matter how deeply they care about this decision, to keep all protests peaceful. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. No intimidation. Violence is never acceptable. Threats and intimidation are not speech. We must stand against violence in any form, regardless of your rationale. Second, I know so many of us are frustrated and disillusioned that the court has taken something away that's so fundamental. I know so many women are now going to face incredibly difficult situations. I hear you. I support you. I stand with you. The consequences and the consensus of the American people, core principles of equality, liberty, dignity, and the stability of the rule of law demand that Roe should not have been overturned. With this decision, the conservative majority of the Supreme Court shows how extreme it is, how far removed they are from the majority of this country. They've made the United States an outlier among developed nations in the world. But this decision must not be the final word. My administration will use all of its appropriate lawful powers, but Congress must act. And with your vote, you can act. You can have the final word. This is not over. Thank you very much. More to say this in weeks to come. Thank you.
Well, there you have the President of the United States calling this a...
Let's see if they do any breakdown before I comment on the Joe Brandon's take here.
Bad day for the court and the country, pledging to do everything in his power to protect women's health. He said now, with Roe gone, let's be clear, the health and life of women are now at risk. Let's bring in our chief White House correspondent, Nancy Cordes. And Nancy, what actions can the president take?
Well, we only heard him give one actual specific in that speech, Nora. He said that he's going to be directing the Department of Health and Human Services to ensure that abortion pills are more widely available, particularly to women who live in states where abortion is now illegal. What he did not say is whether he is going to push the FDA to drop restrictions that currently limit the number of pharmacies that can provide those abortion pills. He didn't announce any new executive orders. Doesn't mean that those won't happen in the days to come, but he didn't lay out any specific plan right now to do things like issue travel vouchers to women so that if they need to go 1,000 miles to get an abortion, it can be a little cheaper for them. He didn't talk about giving service members time off if they live in a state that doesn't allow abortions and they need to travel. So there are going to be a lot of questions on the minds of abortion rights activists about just how far he is willing to go personally. He says he's going to do everything that he can. He called this ruling an extreme ideology and a tragic error, but we're still waiting for some of those details to be filled in, Nora.
And Nancy, the president also making the case that this decision is not the final word. He said that Congress should act. They could act. But he also said, with your vote, you can act, and laying out the case that this will be a central issue in the upcoming midterm elections.
Right, very explicitly laying out a midterm election message saying that the only way to secure women's rights is for Congress to make the right to an abortion a federal law. And he said
there is, in my opinion, no authentic energy on this topic that is more important than the financial strife and the decline of our country in general, just culturally. This issue is not an organic push. This is not something that's going to carry them in the midterms. They're going to try, but it's not there. When you're paying $5 to $8 a gallon for gas, this is not going to be your top priority.
Said we don't have the votes to do that right now. Democrats don't. And so if people care about that, they need to vote in November and elect pro-abortion rights candidates at every level, at the state level and at the national level. And that is an argument that you're all.
Yeah, that's civics. Go ahead and do that if you want to.
Already hearing today, Nora, not just from the President of the United States, from the Speaker of the House and virtually every Democrat that has spoken so far.
Nancy Cordes at the White House. Thank you. Also want to bring in Jan Crawford because you heard him mention Justice Thomas, Clarence Thomas's singular dissent in which he said that he wanted to reconsider marriage equality and contraception, playing out what the furthest right or conservative opinion on the court was saying this should go further.
Right. And Justice Thomas has always been the most conservative justice on the Supreme Court. He is the one who is willing to completely disregard.
Keep in mind, to me, CBS is one of the more neutral corporate platforms. And obviously, this is not a neutral position. I haven't heard them bring somebody out with a different point of view. This is propaganda.
Precedent on a number of cases where other conservative justices are not. And if you look at the majority opinion, which has 5 justices supporting their view, Thomas was the only one who thinks that. The other 4, he doesn't have the votes. The other 4 say, no, it does not. We could not be more clear. These other issues are not implicated. The right to contraception, the right to same-sex marriage, those are not implicated because abortion is different. It involves a fetal life. And so there is actually an extensive analysis kind of bulked up from that initial draft that we saw where the majority is saying, no, we don't agree with that. And Thomas writes separately, but he's only writing for himself.
Jen Crawford, thank you. Also want to.
Yeah, things are crazy when now they're basically calling him, and that's why they talk about his wife, Ginny, all the time. They're basically calling Clarence Thomas some MAGA, in a derogatory use of the word MAGA, not how I use it, like some evil MAGA extremist, a Supreme Court justice. Like, it's almost, if I were just dropped on this country and didn't know, I would almost think that being conservative would be, they're viewing it as being illegal. That's how vicious the language has gotten. And people right now can see you are the radical. If you think his views are the true crazy views and he can't have his views because there are many people in the country that agree with him, then you are the radical. You are the one who's being aggressive here as far as just talking about the topic, and you are the radical.
Bring in our chief Washington correspondent, Major Garrett, who is there at the Supreme Court, which is a fortress with security, but also a number of protests. Major?
Well, of course, it's going to be a fortress because they don't want, J6 was a setup. I mean, you got set up. They had like bike racks out there. Like they couldn't have done it. They basically had a sign that said, "Come on in, y'all. We got the prison space ready. Come on in," and just let them in. And then they knew, like, we got the surveillance state. We're going to track everyone who flew there, and we're going to hunt you down like dogs. And then here they're like, no, we don't want any of that. So let's make sure it's secure.
So, Nora, I've talked to protesters on both sides of this issue this morning since the ruling, the landmark ruling.
And make no mistake, if they were to push through the barriers and go through and do exactly what happened in J6, they would be viewed as heroes and heroines.
Was released, and they both used the same phrase. This is an earthquake. And if so, this judicial earthquake has created a fault line right here on First Street in front of the Supreme Court, where those interested in this opinion have come in much larger numbers since it was handed down at 10:10 Eastern time this morning. I would say
I want to see drone footage. I mean, that looks kind of sparse, though. It's hard to tell. But it doesn't look like J6. J6 was like crazy, the amount of people that were there. I don't know. Maybe they'll get some paid protesters to come through, kind of like Black Lives Matter, cause some problems. Who knows?
the crowd is at least 3 or 4 times larger than it was then. Some of those are curiosity seekers, but some are deeply emotionally involved in this issue. I see tears on both sides. Those who've long opposed abortion rights, tears of joy, tears of gratitude. Those who support abortion rights, bitter tears of anguish and anger about what the Supreme Court has done. One of the embedded ironies.
See, I don't like that language. What the Supreme Court has done. What do you mean, what have they done? See, no one, from all this coverage I've given you, no one has explicitly said, wait, let's just make sure we understand. All they did was leave it up to the states. They kind of hinted at it. So if that's what they did, why would you go after them and say that's what they've done? They haven't made it. I mean, they don't make laws, but they didn't interpret it as it's illegal in every state. If they did that, then I could understand that language because they would have done something. The only thing they did was leave it up to the state. So why are we using this language like they robbed a bank or something? This is weird use of language.
It's bitter tears of anguish and anger about what the Supreme Court has done. One of the embedded ironies in this large and ever-growing assemblage of Americans coming this moment in front of the Supreme Court, if you read the opinion today, the Supreme Court said, don't come here anymore. The Supreme Court has nothing more to say on abortion.
Oh, what's wrong with that? Okay, yeah, they ruled on it. It's done. And obviously, we're going to revisit this. It's going to be a long time, though. It takes a long time to get stuff up there. And that's by design. Because if it took the next day for every topic to get up there, we would be debating it every day. The Supreme Court is a part of the balance of powers, and it takes money to get there and lots of time. So you can't just always use them as a backstop every single day.
Because the Supreme Court no longer recognizes it as a constitutional right worthy of commentary. Go back to your states. Go back to your local community.
What's wrong with that message? Why is nobody saying, well, really, what's wrong with that message? There's nothing wrong with that message. The only people who don't like that message are people who want power at the federal level. That's all Biden was talking about.
Well, they're not doing it here, Nora. They're coming in ever larger numbers.
Excellent point.
Okay, let me comment on Biden's speech. I just took some quick notes here. The only thing that I respected and that I liked from Biden was at the end when he said that he wants protests to be peaceful. I think we all can agree with that. And he sounded sincere in it. It didn't sound like he was just saying it to say it. I think he sincerely doesn't want violent protests. I mean, there's nothing, they wanted, through Jen Psaki said, yeah, we support the illegal protests in front of the justices' homes. The reason why they're like, okay, be peaceful now. She said it was peaceful then, but it was illegal though, is because it's over. There's nothing that's going to be accomplished through violence at this point. We're still far away, somewhat far away from the midterms. It's not what's going to be accomplished. I think he really believed that. No one's rights got taken away. And he said that they've taken, and he started his speech somber. And we need to get to the point, and I'm going to be looking at whoever becomes president, DeSantis or whoever. I will, say DeSantis was president tomorrow, and he was viewed this as a celebratory thing and didn't acknowledge the other side. I would have the same take. If you are going to lead a country, we need to start with context. We've gone too far away from honest discussions. Nobody took away a right. What they said was it's up to the states to decide the rights. That's what they did. The Supreme Court did not take away anybody's rights. What they said is it's not a right in the Constitution. So they did not take away your rights. Obviously, if you're in California, nothing has changed. If you're in New York, nothing has changed. So we start off with the somber, sad day. And then he talks about Roe v. Wade, that was law of the land for many years. What does that have to do with anything? Is it the right decision or not to leave it up to the states? Notice Joe Biden never addressed that. If I could talk to Joe Biden, I would ask him first and foremost, is it the right thing for this to be left up to the states? Obviously, that would force him to say no. And then he would go down the federal route. So I don't want to hear, if you believe that it should be federally designated as a right, I don't want to hear anything from you if the authoritarian religious right says we got to make it illegal all over the place. That's why you should actually celebrate with me that it's up to the states so that you don't get say Marjorie Taylor Greene became president tomorrow and she would push for it to be illegal everywhere federally. Say the whole MAGA was everywhere in DC. That's why leaving it up to the states actually is a good thing and protects you from that. Because in that case, California could lose a right, if you lived in California. This guy was talking about privacy. This is the same guy who wanted to put a needle in your shoulder and fire you from your job if you said no. We can't ignore the hypocrisy there. And we know why the hypocrisy is there, because there's no truth other than power for those. So there's no broad consensus. He said there's broad consensus. No, there's not. Where is that? What broad consensus are you talking about? The way that our country is designed is to respect the right. That's why we have the Electoral College. It's so we're not ruled by a small area of people with concentrated population. People in the city of San Francisco don't know anything about, and they shouldn't have full control over people who are in the rural areas of San Francisco. And when you look at the broader choice of our discussion, we would be pretty much China if we allowed the city of New York in all these populated cities all over our country to decide whether something's constitutional or not. You would just have to rip up the Constitution at that point. There is not broad consensus. This localizes it, that allows people to live around people who have the same view on the world. So I just talked in the chat about how I said legally, and I'm framing my position on this as we go, because I've never used it legally before, because people pushed back and said, do you believe your kids are parasites? I'm like, yeah, good point. No, I didn't view that, but I'm thinking of it legally. My position is I respect your position even if you disagree. There's none of that from our leaders anymore. We need to demand that, even from MAGA. And I do hear that from MAGA. I played the clip from Marjorie Taylor Greene where she literally says, we should have a national peaceful divorce. And if you believe in CRT, I don't believe in it, but you might think it's the best thing ever. That's the type of message I need to hear. That's not an evil message. That's a message of peace. And there's no message of peace coming from Joe Brandon there. And I'm stealing that from Angel's Army. I never called him Joe Brandon. That's the perfect way to mix Joe and Brandon in. And I literally spilled coffee on myself when he got to the point where he mentioned Donald Trump. This ain't got nothing to do with Donald Trump. He said that justices, Republican and Democrat, historically have supported this. You know why? Because they were anti-power with the states. That's why. So if you're an anti-power with the state person, you would never support this decision. So now they're saying, hey, Donald Trump has appointed some of these justices, and now they have flipped that, that what's been historically viewed as a constitutional right, they flipped it when it obviously is not. So he used that as a moment to Donald Trump hate. Man, this every single moment in our country goes back to Donald Trump hate, goes back to MAGA hate, and all that means is that he hates you. No matter if you agree with him on abortion or not, if you are not anti-Trump, they hate you. Period. Not even if you're a Trump supporter. I don't even know if you could label me a Trump supporter. I never voted for him. I've taken MAGA and I'm trying to make it mean something. I don't even know if you could I don't care what you call me. But even if you're neutral, they hate you. You got to understand that. So they talked about the different things he could do, these executive orders, travel vouchers. I haven't heard that. What do you mean, federal travel vouchers for this? I absolutely do not support that. It's ridiculous waste and spend of money. We don't agree with that. You would take federal funds to do that? That should be unconstitutional. Absolutely not. But service members' time off, that's under the executive branch. I have no problem with that. And then you push it to Congress and midterms. The last thing was, I didn't read that. I've heard it, but I haven't read. It takes a while to read and absorb the references in these opinions. But he talked about it sounds like they were talking about same-sex marriage. And I understand that there are people on the religious side. I don't know if it's all religious, but that's typically where that energy comes from, that it should be outlawed, like same-sex marriage. And my standpoint of that is you can have your religious opinion, but marriage really, we're coming down to it as something that the government recognizes. So it's almost a game of semantics to me, if you call it marriage or union, but the government can acknowledge a union, a union between same-sex people. I mean, I hope there's no disagreement on that. And whether you call it a marriage or not because you're religious or not what are we doing, a game of semantics? I don't even understand why that's even coming up. But Clarence Thomas is probably saying this should be left up to the states, which again, I have no problem with. This is a part of that. I don't know if this is federalism, but it could lead to decentralization. And that would be a good thing for sure. Let me go to the comments, see what everybody's saying. Thanks for hanging out. Another huge Smurfer girl, whatevs. I like that screen name. See, I'm not creative, so I just came up with Stuck in the Middle. I was walking with my wife one day, and I told her, I was like, I got to do a channel. This was after the George Floyd stuff was popping off, and I was like, man, this stuff is crazy. And I was like, I got to do a channel, get my thoughts out, man. The voice that I have, I don't hear enough of it. Then that's before I knew about Tim Pool and Steven Crowder and Eric July, but still none of them exactly like mine. And so I did a channel. I was like, what should I call it? And I forget, we were like, it's Stuck in the Middle. It's not very creative, but I'll stick with it. When you search in YouTube, it's very hard to find. So that's not really smart marketing. So Smurfer Girl whatevs, I really like. Another huge waste of money, got bigger with the TSA budget. All these years, they've not stopped one single terrorist. So I haven't been able to follow the chat, but it looks like we're talking about TSA and Patriot Act type stuff after 9/11. Yeah, a lot of money. It's all for show. How much does, I've read some things where they're like, it's really like literally all for show. It's not really that protective, but that's where we are. Angel's Army says, part 1, I have never voted for Trump in both elections, ran in, nor or have I ever voted in 2008 or 2012 elections. I am Native American and I am about common sense, just like you, Stuck in the Middle. Yeah, we sound very similar. I voted for Ralph Nader write-in 2016. 2020, I wrote in Andrew Yang. I never forget it. I probably shouldn't say this, but my wife was actually for Biden. Embarrassing now. Yeesh. If you were for Biden, man, and you haven't, no, if you switched your position, then and she has. She's like, yeah, this dude wasn't that deal. But if you're still sticking by the dude, then I respect you, but that's embarrassing. And I think she wanted me to, because we're in Colorado, we can do drop boxes and all that kind of stuff. That's another topic. I'm not getting off topic. But she was literally over my shoulder, and I was like, I need some room right now. I'm not voting for Biden. So, and she saw me write in Andrew Yang. And I have to do it. Someone got upset, and I don't blame you. Someone got triggered, and I'll get to part 2 of Angel Army's comment in a second. I called Andrew Yang a bitch in a different podcast. And some people were not happy about that. Because I've been Yang Gang. Go back in the channel, search Andrew Yang. I've been praising the dude. But I'll have to do a video to talk about why his ideas are his ideas. And they're either great or not. I'm not going to let my disappointment in his lack of cojones make me look at his ideas as bad. No. But I need to see you with some more conviction. I need to see you stand on something. So I'm in the middle, but it doesn't mean I don't stand on things. So part 2, Angel's Army. Thanks for labeling that part 1 and 2. That made me go back in. Part 2, I am a 32-year-old who has high functioning autism, aka Asperger's, ADHD, bipolar, mood, and seizure disorders. I was once under guardianship, conservatorship from 2008 to 2019. Thank you for sharing that. That provides context. I believe Elon Musk has Asperger's. So, yeah, that gives you, everybody has a different perspective. And I am for diversity. And we have diversity in the chat. What they say when they say diversity is we want different colors, not different opinions, though. But so this is true diversity. You have different perspective and different opinions, and you hear me right now in real time try to shape my views based on the feedback, not to, to be authentic to what I believe, but to be able to talk through these things. Thanks, Angel's Army. Appreciate you. Subscriber to the channel, just $1. So what I do is put those lives, certain lives I will just do live and then just make them members only. Then I'll clip up clips for them. So the $1 will get you access to all the lives. Thank you. $1 a month, that's it. 70 cents to me, 30 cents to YouTube. I'm actually happy to give money to YouTube if people were to, because you want to let YouTube know, whoever it is that you like. There's this big thing with LawTube and that umbrella guy. they were making bank with the Amber Heard trial. And I say, thank goodness, because they're real people with real takes, and they don't hate me even when we disagree. Bet. And give them money on YouTube so YouTube knows I like people that don't hate me and have takes that might not go with the corporate media. Angels Army Part 3. Once I got my independence, I was able to follow and accomplish my goals. But my guardianship is what prevented me from following my goals sooner. So it sounds like Angels Army has a very personal reason to believe in liberty. And that's what I'm for more than anything else. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm taking from that. Kind of almost reminds you of what's going on with Britney Spears. I never really dug into that. I heard people talking about it, but she got her liberty, and I'm all for that. Part 4, Angels Army. But what I'm trying to say is my guardianship was the city power court appointed by Clay County in Minnesota. I now live in Arizona. The city or state government will not control my life. Let's go. Let's go. It probably wasn't easy to move. I don't know, how that process went, but that's what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about even a MAGA or a Republican or Democrat. Who's going to let me live my life? I talked about the DeSantis thing. I got, for me, animated on that topic. DeSantis won the pandemic. Trump did not. So we are at the point where it's done. Trump's political career is over. I know he doesn't feel that way, but it's over because of that. You can still be good. You can still be in the background. My point is, Ron DeSantis fought for freedom for his state. And when it was not easy to do. And it wasn't like it was like Dave Smith or me behind a mic talking about it. He had donors. He had people, citizens he had to think about, the weight of the world against him. I want to live under that. I don't care if he's Republican. I don't care if he's Libertarian. I see his actions. That's what I need. Imagine if we had that leadership in our country. It's a wrap. Donald Trump will be a legend forever for breaking that seal and taking the corporate, fighting through lies on Russiagate and stuff that seems like it should be illegal, what Hillary Clinton and others did. Sussman having badges to the FBI, lying, fake dossiers, and fought through that and won. Legend forever. Even though in the moment I didn't fully understand the context, as time goes on, I do. Steve Bannon as well and others. Peter Navarro. Obviously, they're trying to arrest and hem them up. But now it's, you created that, you broke through that seal, and now we're moving on. With or without you, bruh. And it's because Angels Army's comment. That's what we need right now. We needed you at the time. No one else could have done it. DeSantis obviously couldn't have done it, beat Hillary Clinton. No one else could have done what Trump did. He came on the scene with jokes, humor. I think he's authentic for love of country. And he met the moment at the right time. He was the Molotov cocktail, figuratively, that people threw into D.C. Now, and I know, you know how I feel about 2020, but it's over now as far as the politics. That doesn't mean your life's over. That doesn't mean you can't still be influential. I need you to step aside, bro. This is too serious right now. Thank you. Angels Army got me hyped with that. That's a real life story of to me, liberty. Government needs to get the hell out the way. You can make recommendations on medical, like you can make a recommendation that someone have an abortion or not with your state officials or whatever, but you don't dare legislate that. You can do a recommendation whether if you work with a employer with over 100 people and you have to go into the office, whether you should take a V for vendetta in your shoulder or not. You can make a recommendation, but you damn sure better not legislate that. Now we got problems. Thank you, Angels Army. Smurfer Girl Whatevs says the court system makes us work against ourselves. They even step in and fill out forms on our behalf when we don't request them. Nobody knows the forms exist because it's not mentioned. Wow, I was not aware of that. You can detail more about that. Thanks for that. I'm not surprised. Bishop, friend of show, everybody's friend of show, but Bishop, thanks for stopping by as usual. Without Trump, there would never have been a DeSantis. Word. I appreciate what he did to reform the Republican Party. Absolutely. I hope Trump doesn't have much gray area. So if you say I'm for DeSantis, Trump goes scorched earth on you. So if Trump knew me, he would probably take me out his phone. He would probably, I don't think he would block, but he would probably be like this funny looking dude. He would have all his jokes and I wouldn't joke back. I would just be like, Trump, I'm not against you, bruh. Without you, we wouldn't be here. You're a living legend, period. Will go down historically as a living legend, opening the door for DeSantis. But we watched DeSantis grow up. It feels like we watched DeSantis grow up over just, a couple years? Basically 4 years, we saw DeSantis grow up into like a boss, one of the most promising politicians of our lifetime. Ron DeSantis is. It's time. He's ready. There's no, when that moment comes, you don't wait. So I before I was waffling on this. I'm not waffling anymore. It's over. Like if you are in a job and you're looking at a position, you don't, if the time's right and you have positioned yourself, you don't wait. That time may never come again. You must strike when the iron is hot. It is time right now to rally around Ron DeSantis. Period. That time starts now. So there's no waffling on that for me now anymore. B. Deering 1-1, he did expose a lot, but yes, DeSantis is a great choice. And when you talk to people, a lot of people say that. And for those who support Trump, obviously I'm not against you. Still, Trump is still influential. It's just, who's the right person for this moment? We're getting more heat from global organizations. And we did have a win on this treaty for the global top men. It didn't go through. Well, not the treaty, but the rules. It's kind of different. So we did get a win there because they got a lot of backlash. But we're still getting pressure on globalization. And that's all that's happened since the pandemic. The number one thing that's happened since the pandemic isn't the pandemic. It's the theft of money from common people. Through inflation, the attack on the middle class. It's all against that. And DeSantis is the right person for this moment. There's no way to really question that. The guy that Trump endorsed, Dr. Oz, at least as of last night, did not even comment on the Second Amendment and the win that happened in the court. I'm not saying to celebrate it or anything like that. You can come out and say it was the right thing to do. We had a massive victory. As far as the Constitution and the Second Amendment. And I don't expect him, and I don't want him to come out and rub it in the face and celebrate. I might do that though. I'm trying to work on a video called Cope and Seethe. So I might rub it in the face, but I don't want them to. And he did. I haven't heard him say anything about it. He removed Trump from his homepage. Like if I was running for office, I wouldn't have Trump on my homepage to begin with. But if you were rolling with Trump and then all of a sudden now you're not, that to me, that doesn't line up. So yeah, big stuff here. I'll wrap up here in a second and see if CBS is still live, see what else is going on out there. Let me get a little different point of view. I know that Bryson Gray was live earlier. Streaming a Bryson Gray stream is dangerous though. Do I really want? I don't think he's live anymore, and you have to be a member to watch him. So I'm not going to stream that, but that would be a dangerous proposition, wouldn't it? to stream a Bryson Gray stream live. You living life on the edge. I support Bryson Gray, nothing against him, but he could say anything at any moment. He just got off a week ban. So that's a serious thing. That probably means he had a strike, and you can't, obviously you get too many strikes, you're gone. They could just remove you at any moment, anytime. So yeah. I'm gonna look to see if I can get a different perspective. Maybe see, did Tim Pool drop Tim Pool dropped a video an hour ago on it. Let's see what Mr. Tim Pool had to say on it.
All right. So this is typically I don't film these actually live. I don't do the live streams on this channel, but this news is so big. That's what we're doing. This streaming setup that I use here for my Tim Pool YouTube channel is not set up for live streaming, but we have to do it. Normally I do 10 a.m., 1 p.m. on my other channel, but this news is so huge and there's so much here. We've got to break it down, and this is one of the biggest stories of our generation. One of the biggest stories of the past 2 generations. Roe v. Wade has been overturned by the Supreme Court. We knew this was coming, but it extends beyond just what we expected. First, let me say, a bold move. Overturning Roe.
Some people were saying that, and I don't know. Maybe I don't. So there's someone on Twitter I respect, I forget her name, she's great on Twitter, said that there was courage here in the decision from the Supreme Court. And I'm trying to battle the emotions of being, is it grateful or thankful for them doing what is the right thing? And I don't want to use the word courage. I don't know if it was courage or bold. I mean, it's simple. It was the right move to do. I'm not going to give you extra credit for that. What would have been courage is if they would have taken Texas v. Pennsylvania. That would have shown some courage, because that would have forced our country to meet at that moment. Are we going forward or not? And if you don't know, Texas was the election 2020 lawsuit. They decided not to take the case. I'm not going to call them courageous now. That would have been courage, because they didn't have to take the case. Obviously, they didn't do it. If they would have taken that case, that even though that's why they exist, I still would have said that was courage, knowing what the ramifications of what that means. I'm not going to call this courageous from them. I just won't. It doesn't fit my description.
Roe v. Wade on a Friday morning. Churches have been warned about the night of rage. Over 20 pro-life targets have been vandalized. Pregnancy centers, which just provide resources for expecting mothers, have been firebombed. And now we have threats and more fear of terror. The worst possible day to release this ruling would be on a Friday. And a Friday is atypical for the Supreme Court. In the majority, Justice Alito basically laid it down. There is no constitutional guarantee.
They usually release opinions on Tuesday, I believe, or Thursday. So if they did it on Thursday, is it that much of a difference? I don't think so.
Of a right to abortion, it goes back to the states. The big news right now, as far as I understand, having read the concurrence from Clarence Thomas, and with statements, I've reached out to some lawyer friends. Clarence Thomas is outright saying it is incumbent upon the court to review other court cases, notably Oberfell, to correct those errors. That is basically saying next in line will be the overturning of gay marriage. Not that it will happen. Not that this ruling will do that, but that they should. I'm hearing that other networks and outlets are saying they will not be overturning gay marriage. That's not the case, but I think that's just an attempt at toning things down. Clarence Thomas basically said these were decided in error and they must be corrected. Now, he does say, as does Alito, this will not impact anything outside of abortion. But the argument made here and presented forward by the Supreme Court basically says married couples' rights to contraception, the right to privacy in adult activities, and gay marriage were decided in error. I can actually read this stuff for you. We got protests erupting already in front of the Supreme Court, fear of widespread rioting and vandalism and acts of terror throughout this weekend. We have the breaking news from timcast.com. My friends, if you haven't already, head over to timcast.com, become a member. Please help support our work.
I am a member, and I'm very strong. If you can afford it, to support, if you support it and you appreciate what Tim does, very, very strongly believe to give money to people who don't hate you. It is very important. I just ordered all kinds of stuff off Amazon, and every time the box comes, I just cringe a little bit more because I'm giving money to somebody who hates me. So I'm not changing that habit because it's so convenient. But what I can do is balance things out. I can cancel Netflix and go to Timcast. That ain't a problem. So I'm very big on that. And he's much respect to what he's building there. My goodness. The dude is amazing. Timcast.com. If you don't subscribe, you don't even need to subscribe to get the news. He is building a news platform. It's getting better and better and better. This dude is an inspiration to me. It's getting better and better. And I think he's got Queen of All Liberty. What's her name? Josie? Redhead, the redheaded libertarian writing opinion pieces. Cassandra McDonald is like the editor. I mean, he's not getting these are real, people who do real work. This isn't some shoddy organization. Just excellent work.
Tell you why. We got journalists working 24/7 to get these stories out and make sure they are as true and correct as possible. As a member, you get access to exclusive segments from the Timcast IRL podcast. We're going to have that live show up at 8 p.m. Normally, I don't do these segments live, but this is historical. This is one of the most important days of our lives in terms of politics. This will go down in history. This date will be a major turning point. And I don't just mean for abortion. I'm also talking about the political conflict in this country and what this could mean for it moving forward. So we got a lot to talk about, hence doing this live. Go to timcast.com, become a member, support our work. We're working on documentaries about gun control, the Federal Reserve. These are in preliminary stage.
Now he's doing documentaries. I don't know if you heard, he's in the works to have a sit down with Trump. I mean, this is serious stuff. And it's risky. As big as Tim is, I mean, he's had Bannon on, Posevec on. These are people that corporate Republicans and Democrats absolutely despise and would do anything to just destroy their lives. And he gets swatted. You think the FBI is going to get to the bottom of that? They're probably more likely to be in on it, allegedly. They're probably more likely to storm the compound than find out who's doing the swatting. He's really putting himself, this is dangerous stuff.
And they're very expensive. So the more of you who do sign up to support our work, the more capable we will be in producing and expanding more. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel. Hopefully this stream is working, and I don't know if it is because I've never done a live stream with this rig right now, but I just had to go for it. Here's the breaking news. Many of you have already seen, but let's go through this and let's go through some of the the more pressing statements made in this opinion from timcast.com. The Supreme Court has voted to overturn 1973's Roe v. Wade, handing abortion laws back to the states. The 79-page opinion was written by Justice Samuel Alito with a separate concurring opinion by Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Alito wrote that the Roe court usurped the power to address a question of profound moral and social importance that the Constitution unequivocally leaves for the people. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, Justice Samuel Alito wrote. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives, the ruling stated. Justice Clarence Thomas wrote that it is time to reiterate his view that the Due Process Clause does not protect a right to an abortion. In their dissent, liberal Justices Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor, and Stephen Breyer wrote, with sorrow for this court, but more, for the many millions of American women who have today lost a fundamental constitutional protection, we dissent. From Roe to sorrow, it is truly sad. Whatever the exact scope of the coming laws, the dissenters write, one result of today's decision is certain: the curtailment of women's rights and of their status as free and equal citizens. Chief Justice John Roberts did not join the majority. It did not, surprisingly. In a concurrent opinion, he wrote that he would not have overturned Roe. Instead, only upholding Mississippi's law banning abortion after 15 weeks. In Dobbs v. Jackson, Women's Health Organization, the Supreme Court was hearing Mississippi's appeal of a lower court ruling that found the state's 2018 law banning abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy was unconstitutional. The law, HB 1510, the Gestational Age Act, banned abortion after 15 weeks except in cases of medical emergencies or severe fetal abnormalities. There were no exceptions for cases in rape or incest. The day Mississippi's law went into effect, Jackson's Women's Health Organization, which provided abortions through 16 weeks, filed a lawsuit, along with one of their donors, Sasheen Carr Ellis. The lawsuit named State Health Officer Thomas E. Dobbs from the Mississippi State Department of Health and Kenneth Cleveland, Executive Director of Mississippi State Board of Medical Licensure. The abortion provider won in lower courts, and injunctions were issued to bar the law from being enforced based on the decision in 1992's Planned Parenthood v. Casey. Casey struck down the trimester limitations from Roe and instead prohibited states from banning abortion prior to fetal viability, which is typically considered around 24 weeks into pregnancy. Mississippi went on to appeal to the Supreme Court and asked them to overturn both Roe and Casey. Oral arguments took place in December of 2021. Now let's talk about where this gets particularly interesting. In the arguments, I believe it was Clarence Thomas who asked the petitioner, where does it, or asked the pro-abortion side, where in the Constitution does it say you have a right to abortion? And the response was the 14th Amendment, equal access under the law. Clarence Thomas said, look, when I look at the Constitution, I see the Second Amendment. It says the right to keep and bear arms shall not.
Exactly what I just talked about earlier. It's if you're going to have an honest discussion about this, we have to be honest. It's not explicit in the Constitution. We can make it explicit with an amendment. We know that's not going to happen because unlike what Biden says, there's not a consensus. We don't even know what a woman is. We have nowhere near the consensus to determine this. So it has to be left up to the states. There's no other argument. So that is the point right there that Tim's talking about right here.
Be infringed. Doesn't say abortion. Brett Kavanaugh came in and said, why is this not an issue for legislators?
The separation of powers. You have the judicial branch, you have the legislative branch. And what's happening is the legislative branch has been really held up on Roe v. Wade by the judicial branch. And all they said was, we don't make laws. It's not here. If you want to make it explicit, you can. That's not what we do. It was a terrible decision. That's all that was said.
For Congress. And you know what? I think they're right. This is tough. This really is.
It's not tough. When you look at just from the fundamental principle here, it's not. I know talking about babies being aborted, that's tough. But no, we're talking about a state versus federal. That part isn't tough.
I think there needs to be some degree of privacy. Most of you know that I lean more towards the traditional pro-choice, which really doesn't exist in modern politics.
The traditional pro-choice is a waffling to me. You pick some arbitrary point where you say abortion has to be illegal. There's no arbitrary point. Either it is or it isn't. So I'm not for the traditional pro-choice stance. I am pro-choice personally, but legislatively, I'm pro-life personally. Legislatively, it's all 100% up to the woman. No exceptions, no arbitrary time frames, none of that.
And that is pre-viability. The baby can't survive on its own. There's a question of the woman's right to privacy.
No. The baby can't survive, the fetus can't survive, period, on its own until the mother takes it out or, pushes it out. There is no viability like, oh, at this point, it's still inside the mother, but it could survive if it were outside in the real world. It ain't outside in the real world. So what? That's irrelevant. It's still in the mother. So your idea of if it were in the real world is an idea of if we were to go and extract it from the mother, then that's force. It makes no sense. Viability, the argument for viability is ridiculous. It's not outside the mother.
There are important questions pertaining to when life begins and when life is protected. It would seem that
those are two different questions. Is it a living organism? Yes. Who has control over that living organism is the question. If you are going to force a woman to go through and give birth or, God forbid, forcefully extract the living organism, you are saying the government has the right over that. You're bypassing the woman. The woman's in the middle like, wait a second. This thing is in me. So hopefully you don't have abortions. Abortion's not something to be celebrated. Are you crazy? But the right still is there. Otherwise, you're saying the government has the right to do that? You must be out of your mind. No, the fetus doesn't have a right. It's a parasite. It's living off of the mother. So the viability, is it a human? All of that does not bypass when it is living literally with a cord, getting nutrients and food off of another human being. Of course, it doesn't have any rights beyond that host. And I know that sounds very coarse, but I'm just talking about from a legal standpoint.
Supreme Court's view right now is you have a right to life and liberty, and just because you're not born, you are still alive. That life must be protected. The left takes an approach that, in my opinion, I just don't understand. Look, I understand there's a difficult moral question around choice, pro-life, etc. But I do not understand the argument that life begins after birth. That makes no sense.
No. Life begins before birth. The rights over that life is the argument. There are no rights for the fetus until the fetus is out here in the world like everybody else. If babies were delivered via stork, they would have rights when the stork brought them. It's not about life or not. It's about who has rights over that, who controls the rights. Just like I have rights over my children right now. Who's going to override those rights? You would have to have a reason to override them. So the baby isn't, so even if I'm a father and I want to have the child, it's not my decision. I don't have rights over the host of the child.
My perspective comes down to a procedural, to authority, the rights of what the state can and can't do. So the Supreme Court has basically said they're not prescribing any morality on abortion. They're simply saying it's not in the Constitution. But this is where things get interesting. I got to say, many on the left were 100% correct. They said, if Donald Trump wins, Roe v. Wade's gone. Many of us, even me, I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I did not predict this either. So, yeah, it is surprising. Still wouldn't call it courageous. It's the right thing to do.
They said if Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed, Roe v. Wade is gone. And I'm like, come on. I didn't believe it. I really, really, truly did not believe it. I did not believe that Brett Kavanaugh, that any of these people would have the spine to stand up and say no to this. Look at the Bruin ruling. This is the gun control issue. Brett Kavanaugh came out and said, no, the Supreme Court says that, he says the...
I haven't talked about the New York versus Bruin. It's so simple. We have the Second Amendment. It's like literally looking at 1 + 1 is 2. I don't even know what we're arguing over. So I'm happy about it, but I'm not giving them any credit for that either. That ruling was just unbelievably simple to do. And I read through that. Well, I really like Speechify, the audio stuff. So while I was cleaning out my car, I listened to the whole opinion for the New York versus Bruin, and it's really basic stuff. I mean, it's so basic.
The Constitution does allow you to require permitting. And I'm like,
no, it doesn't.
The right to keep.
No, it doesn't. and Tim will agree with that. The only reason you require a permit is so you can deny a permit. That's the only reason. That's the only reason you would require someone to have a permit.
Keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Infringe is defined as curtailed, undermined, or limited. Telling a person they need permission from the government to get a weapon sounds like an infringement to me, but that was Kavanaugh. I didn't think the ruling would come down today, and it did. But the left was right when they said this was on the line. The next thing they said was Oberfell is next. This is the Supreme Court ruling that guaranteed nationwide the right to gay marriage. I also didn't believe it, but here we are. Now, this one, I think, is starting to step a bit too far in terms of cultural issues. But if we're dealing with questions of law, then I'm sorry, I just don't know.
I do know. It should be up to the states. It's not in the Constitution. It should be up to the states, period.
Look, for a lot of people, we feel that, former liberal, former Democrats, post-liberal, if you're going to allow a man and a woman to form a union, to have certain tax rights and benefits, that should be extended to all people. There are serious questions about the slippery slope. My view on this has evolved quite a bit in my understanding of moral philosophy in legal jurisprudence. Let me break that down. First, let me explain. Over on Twitter, I said, let me just add another holy... And I posted this statement from Clarence Thomas in concurrence. Let me actually just read for you what he wrote. And this one is huge. Clarence Thomas, concurring, writes, the court today declines to disturb substantive due process jurisprudence generally, or the doctrine's application in other specific contexts. Cases like Griswold v. Connecticut, the right of married persons to obtain contraceptives, Lawrence v. Texas, the right to engage in private consensual acts, and Oberfell v. Hodges, the right to same-sex marriage, are not at issue. The court. So let me just stress. He says the cases like Griswold, Connecticut, Lawrence, they are not at issue.
I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I think I get the feeling that the more they attack Clarence Thomas's wife and attack him, the more he's digging into these type of issues and trying to push the court this direction. I would recommend to those who don't agree with, those who see the world differently than Clarence Thomas, I would recommend stop trying to pressure him. Because this is not some man without power. This is not some man who can't convince others of his position. The more you attack him there, you're actually, I think, motivating him. I have no evidence of this. That's the feeling I get, because I see him more. He just recently did an interview, and I feel him more jumping into the political stuff more than he would have normally. I mean, you could say that about me. I wouldn't jump into the Black Lives Matter and all this stuff. Once you start pushing me and you don't show the other side, then I feel like I need to push back. So I don't, they probably wouldn't heed my advice, but I think that's what's happening. The more you push against him, especially against his wife, I think he's pushing back harder and harder.
The court's abortion cases are unique. See ante at 31, 32, 66, 71, blah, blah, blah. And no party has asked us to decide whether our entire 14th Amendment jurisprudence must be preserved or revised. Thus, I agree that nothing in the court's opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. Okay, nothing in the court's opinion. He goes on to say, for that reason, in future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Oberfell, because any substantive...
Well, you have to. You have to, not just those, but any at all. You have to consider that.
Due process decision is demonstrably erroneous. We have a duty to correct the error established in those precedents.
And they will use, let me stop here for a second. And I like listening to Tim because he brings out the thoughts in me. He's much more well researched on this. I haven't even read I've seen some clips on Twitter, but you got to read the whole thing to get it. The side that's against Clarence Thomas would say he's a threat to democracy. And what Clarence Thomas is doing is actually trying to save our country. He is helping us go towards a peaceful route. This route that we're on right now is the wrong route. He is helping us towards federalism. And that will help us. If you want to keep the country together, this is the only way forward. So he's actually doing, I think, the right thing for democracy and the country. So people will try to view it a different way. No, I don't agree. He's taken the focus off the federal government. And if you don't agree with whatever the abortion law is in your state, take it up with people who are much closer to you than us. If you can get your people to do an amendment, so Joe Biden said we can write Roe v. Wade into law. No, you can't. I mean, you can, but then that would go to the Supreme Court as well. You would need to do a constitutional amendment. Then it would be solid. I talked about this before. There's nothing holding this thing up other than faith. The Supreme Court does not have an enforcement body, meaning when they do a decision, there ain't stopping nobody from saying, I don't care. Whether it's Texas or California, it's all based on faith. So they do this ruling, a state could say, I don't care. You remember Joe Biden did the unconstitutional eviction moratorium. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't force landlords not to evict people, even if you have programs where you're going to pay them back, stuff like that. You just can't do it. They ruled on it. And then later on, Joe Biden did it again. And the Supreme Court's like, didn't we just rule on this? That's literally how the opinion came. They're like, bro, we just talked about this. So they had to be careful because the veil is starting to peel back. It's like you've got shoes and they're worn in the soles and they're peeling and you can start to see the feet underneath. You see that, oh, damn, all this expensive 200 pairs of shoes is just a piece of rubber and it's peeling back and I need another one. We're peeling back and seeing what would stop Joe Biden from doing another eviction moratorium right now. He could do it a third time. If you're not going to impeach him, he could do it an infinite amount of time. That's not against the law. There's nothing you could do. That means there's nothing holding this up other than faith. So they said New York versus Bruin. New York, your laws are unconstitutional on the Second Amendment. They said that. There is nothing stopping New York from saying, F you, we're still going to do it. Now, you could say that's a good thing if you want decentralization. You're making all of these federal institutions illegitimate as long as it's peaceful, and I would agree. I'm all for that. But if you want to keep it together, then obviously that's not the way. And then you can't look at Texas. If Texas says, then okay, we're not going to observe any laws that are unconstitutional in the Second Amendment. It goes both ways. So the Kathy Hochul already talked about it. She already talked about how she was like, you know what? I don't know. We're going to work on this. Wait, what's there to work on? They ruled on it. She said something to the effect of, we're going to work on this and see what we can do here. Do what? It's unconstitutional. So we're getting to that point. There was a John Stossel. I might do a sidetrack here and then maybe come back to Tim or go to somebody else. John Stossel, who was great, always reminds me of back in the day in the 90s. My dad and I loved watching 2020. John Stossel was excellent on 2020. And it's good to see him doing his own thing. He has Stossel TV now. He's doing his own thing, and he's staying true to who he is. Let me show you what happened when John Stossel tried to. So you know the Second Amendment. It basically comes down to the right to keep and bear arms to the people shall not be infringed. So let me make sure I get the verbiage is very important. I should have it memorized, but I want to make sure that I have the first part, the comma, stated right. A well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So I don't need the Supreme Court. They're not some type of gods that are, I need them to interpret this law. Like, I don't need you to do that. It's common sense. It's simple to understand. So that's the Second Amendment. And this is how it played out for John Stossel. Watch this. Please watch this.
Are you allowed to carry a gun for safety? The Supreme Court's weighing in on that. The issue?
Whether the government must let residents carry a handgun in public.
Let me double check and make sure. I got to take this default off. I'm going to have echoes if I don't. It's sharing audio in two places. Let me bring that back.
I know a little about this conflict because I once tried to get a carry permit in my town. They didn't make it easy. This is 50 pages.
The form says I must promise I know the definition of other weapons like
metal knuckle knife, a kung fu star. I don't want a kung fu star. I just want a gun for safety. It took hours just to fill out the forms. Then you have to go in person to police headquarters. Here they fingerprinted me, asked me to give reasons why I should be allowed to have a gun, and they charged me a $430 application fee. Half a year later, they told me, no, you may not have a carry permit. They said I could try again if I could prove a special need for a gun. And I tried that. I showed them threats on my life. Not good enough, they said later. Yet other people got permits. Big celebrities got them. So did the politically connected.
Friends of the ruling class, that's who gets it. Everyone else, you're out of luck.
I wasn't famous enough. But I probably would have gotten a permit if I had bribed the cops in the permit department. Turned out they were taking
lavish gifts in exchange for gun permits.
So were some politically connected lawyers like this man. And a man with police connections was caught
offering cops as much as $6,000 to issue gun permits without doing background checks.
In other places, a political contribution got people permits. Scams like that thrive whenever politicians pass too many laws. And wait, why do such restrictions even exist? I thought the Supreme Court already ruled that all Americans have the right to have a gun.
The High Court voted 5-4 that firearms are essential for self-defense no matter where people live.
But
many other courts have thumbed their nose at that Supreme Court ruling.
That's why Alan Gottlieb and his Second Amendment Foundation support this new case. Robert Nash and Brendan Koch sued after they were denied permits, and that case has now reached the Supreme Court. You're excited about this.
Yeah, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
Court watchers predict his side will win, especially because there are more originalist judges on the court. So it's likely that soon.
So this is an old piece. We know that it has been. They did win.
More Americans will legally be able to carry guns. Of course, lots of people say that will be terrible.
No more silence. End gun violence.
Women are less safe when there are more guns. Every vulnerable population, be it LGBT people, students of color, has more to fear.
Actually, data on new gun owners shows that many minorities and women believe having a gun gives them less to fear.
There's an awful lot of women out there that bought firearms to protect themselves and feel a whole lot safer.
And here's another common argument against people owning guns.
The more guns we have, the less safe we all are. And we are the laughingstock of the world.
We are the laughingstock of the world.
Well, I think there's an awful lot of people around the world that wish they had the freedom we have in America.
It's irrelevant. I don't even entertain those arguments, whether it's safer or not. The Constitution is simple. So if you want to, either you want to abide by it or not. It doesn't matter what your angle is on the safer and this marginalized group and that. then amend it. And this is not one that we're already trying to leave it up to the states. This one shouldn't be left up to the states. It's in the Constitution explicitly.
And have a Second Amendment. 800,000 times a year, a person uses a firearm to protect themselves. If you call 911, they usually get there after the crime is over and fill out the paperwork.
And it's true, in prisons, felons have always told me what they feared most was not the police, but a victim.
I don't care.
When you're going to rob somebody you don't know,
it's good to know, but it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
It makes it harder because you don't know what to expect out of them.
Often just showing the pistol is enough to protect yourself.
Just the mere presence of the gun stops the crime from happening.
And yet, compared to other countries,
there is more gun crime here.
There's more crime of all sorts here compared to many other countries. We have a lot of social, economic, and cultural reasons why.
I mean to kill you in 1 minute, Ned.
America has always been different. The frontier attracted people with guns. And even today, all the Americas have higher murder rates. Yet there's also evidence that given America's culture, allowing all people to carry guns reduces crime. Over the last decades, most states switched from banning carrying guns to allowing it. And as they did, violent crime went down. Especially telling, in each state, crime dropped right after they changed the law. Gottlieb says that's because
an armed society is a polite society.
I didn't believe that until I started researching gun crime. But now I think it's true. More guns does generally mean less crime.
I thought that was a great piece by John Stossel, and really the beginning was the part that got me on this topic, where he said it took 6 months and they denied him, yet all these other New York celebrities got their guns. That's obviously unconstitutional. I don't need the Supreme Court to tell me that. It's there. It's simple. You don't need a long opinion. I mean, it's just right there. So that's why I'm not giving them extra credit, or there's not much to give them. I mean, it's just simple.
After overruling these demonstrably erroneous decisions, the question would remain whether other constitutional provisions guarantee the myriad rights that our substantive due process cases have generated. For example, we could consider whether any of the rights announced in the court's substantive due process cases are privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States protected by the 14th Amendment. He goes on to say, to answer that question, we would need to decide important antecedent questions, including whether the Privileges or Immunities Clause protects any rights that are not enumerated in the Constitution, and if so, how to identify these rights. That said, even if the clause does protect unenumerated rights, the court conclusively demonstrates that abortion is not one of them under any plausible interpretive approach. Moreover, apart from being a demonstrably incorrect reading of the Due Process Clause, the legal fiction of substantive due process is particularly dangerous. At least 3 dangers favor jettisoning the doctrine entirely. So wow, he is saying outright, this opinion does not address Griswold, Lawrence, and Oberfell. In the future, we should, because they're in error and should be overturned. Now, reading complex legalese and statements, not my expertise. I called a lawyer. I said, tell me I'm wrong about this. Because we're hearing reports. Fox News is saying, no, it doesn't cast doubt. Yes. Let me stress. There's kind of a two-handed approach happening here.
It casts doubt, but you still would have to get it ruled upon. So what my take on it is, Clarence Thomas is obviously trying to influence the conservative members of the Supreme Court to do the right thing when those cases there. Obviously, he's making a call. I don't know if they're already bubbling up to them or not. They probably are, but he's making a call for them to first hear the case and then second to rule in this way to be consistent with this ruling. So yeah, obviously, there's a lot that's on the line. If it's not in the Constitution, it's on the line to, I don't know what else is out there, but
it would seem that Thomas is saying this case should not cast doubt on those rulings. However, we should reassess those rulings because they are.
No. He's saying that this ruling does not legally affect these other topics, but let's look at these other topics and, in my opinion, to be consistent with this ruling.
Are in error. It sounds like what he's saying is he's trying to have it both ways. That this ruling, this ruling's on abortion. No one's asked us to opine on those.
No, he's not having it both ways. That's wrong. There's 2 different things. This case didn't have anything to do with those other ones. They typically keep it very narrow to what's in front of them. So he's saying that this ruling does not affect anything else. But if you want it to affect something else, we should probably rule on that if it comes to us. I don't think there's any both ways on that. He's actually trying to make it clear, because he can't say, it's hard to say, bring these other cases to us without saying and clarifying that this one only applies here, because he has to make a message to the lower courts.
But I'm going to do it anyway. I don't know if we'll actually to that point. So I talked to the lawyer buddy. He said it's certainly fragile, but it doesn't mean that's actually going to happen. It's just that on these grounds, as it pertains to Roe v. Wade, there's questions about these other rulings. To put it simply, the Constitution, if they don't guarantee it, you can't say it's a right.
Somebody had to bring up these other cases, because the question would arise, since you did this, you overturned Roe v. Wade. The logical question, next question is, what about these other things, including same-sex marriage or anything else that's not explicit in the Constitution? So somebody had to bring it up, because that would be the logical next question.
I find that particularly interesting, and it makes sense. It should go to legislators and not to the Supreme Court to just decide that something makes sense, therefore it is. But there are very serious questions then. For a long time, the Supreme Court has legislated from the bench on many issues. And it is worrying. But many of these issues, I think, are good things. I mean, you look at interracial marriage. The idea that you could ban that, to me, is insane. These miscegenation laws, you couldn't even cohabitate with someone of a different race. Where would we be as a country if that remained? So, is that up to question now? I mean, that falls under due process, doesn't it? There's nothing in the Constitution.
And I had a debate with somebody about this. Absolutely. All of that should be up to debate. I want to decentralize the whole federal government. So if you do that, it's all up to debate for the states. And I think we would all be in a safer, better place if we went that route. So yeah, I mean, I'll have to look at it legally, and does it fall under the Constitution or federal laws? But ultimately, I don't want anybody in D.C. So yeah, it would all be up to the states, even slavery. I don't think there are any pro-slavery states, but I think everything should be up to the states.
That says this, that you have a right to marry someone of a different race, but are we going to see that cast doubt? I am not okay with that. I'm also...
So that's where Tim and I disagree on that. Well, I have to look at it legally, but I have no problem getting rid of the... If you're a libertarian that want to decentralize the federal government, absolutely you want all of that left up to the states.
So not okay with these questions being raised. Or I don't know, man. As a legal issue, there are very important questions that need to be answered. But let me tell you this. When I mentioned before that I've evolved substantially in the past several years on the question of moral jurisprudence and the courts, I've come to realize that there's no such thing as set law. What I mean is, Seamus Coughlin of Freedom Tunes. We have him on Timcast IRL. You're probably a fan. You've probably seen him. He's much more conservative than I. He's very Catholic. He's very pro-life. And he said, the left has proven the slippery slope fallacy is a fallacy because it's actually a cliff. You go off and you go straight to the bottom. He's not wrong. The issue is, there is no position by which you stand and say, this is the moral line. When we said and we decided that there is a constitutional right to marry who you love, regardless of the law, many people said, well, that means this, that, or otherwise. And we said, no, this is our line. We agree on this, but not that. When Obergefell was being decided, many people on the right said, this is a slippery slope. What's next? Kids in school, they're going to be taught about this stuff? Okay, maybe. But the left said that's not the case. My attitude was no. There's a big difference between saying someone can get married to someone they love and schools should be teaching about it. But the reality is, it's not digital, it's analog. It is not a point-by-point progression. It is a slope and a wave. What that means is, it's not a slippery slope. It's progression and advancement and development.
Yes, I agree with all of this. And all of that just strengthens the argument of federalism. as we get to this point where we have less and less shared common values, you can't legislate common values. If you are okay with children going to hypersexualized drag shows, then you have a moral foundation that's different than mine or other people. And that's fine. You can do what you do with your family or whatever. But as we separate, then we need to have more power locally. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then what you end up doing is fighting for the central power to have power over somebody else. So this is great. The Roe v. Wade being overturned is great and has nothing to do with before you even talk about abortion.
When you do have a ruling like Obergefell that guarantees gay marriage, then you invariably get parents saying, my kids need to learn about this, don't they? Shouldn't schools be teaching about Obergefell and these?
See, here's the line. To me, there's a clear line here, so I probably don't agree with him on this. The clear line is, are you teaching opinion as fact? Period. That's not hard. In a public school, you should not be teaching opinion as fact. So if you want to talk about gay marriage is legal, of course you can talk about that. That's a fact. If you say gay marriage should be celebrated, that's opinion. If you say gay marriage should be illegal, that's opinion. And it should not be taught in schools. It shouldn't even be debated in schools until you get to higher education, college. That's because there is no true debate. We don't have a true debate. Like, can I be a high schooler right now in 10th grade and make a case against Black Lives Matter without being ostracized? If you can't have an honest debate without being pressured, ostracized, fear of your health or life, then you can't have that debate in a public school. The line is simple. Of course you can talk about it in the school. You can talk about facts. When you say the country, we should reimagine the country as if it were founded at 1619 when the first slaves were brought over here. Let's reimagine the country if it were founded like that. No, that shouldn't be taught in school. That's an opinion. If you want to talk about when the country was founded, 1776, and you want to talk about specific dates and facts, absolutely. Tell me where I'm wrong. The line is not complicated. Because when you get into opinion, that is going down the route of religion and faith. So if you want to argue, let's just open the floodgates and have everyone just do whatever they want, then I'm fine with that. So that means I could teach politics. I could say Steve Bannon is an important historical figure. I could teach that in school. So if you want to teach that LGBTQ is something to be celebrated in school with the flag and all that, okay. Well, then in some schools, they could teach whatever they want. They could teach the MAGA. They could even teach some religions that are really bad. Either open up the floodgates or the floodgates stay closed. I don't think that's hard. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't see where the difficulty is.
Changes, and thus, yes, in schools they do begin teaching about that stuff. Now, for me, I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue with kids in sex ed when they're not ready and parents don't have a right to, don't have access or being denied their right to consent to these kids' access to sex ed and things like that. But what then happens is,
sex ed when I was in school was all factual. They didn't talk about opinions they literally talked about the anatomy, probability of getting someone pregnant, stuff like that, like factual things.
Someone says, okay, if you're saying I have a right to marry whoever I love, what about siblings? And it's actually now there. The issue is it's not a slippery slope, it's degrees. And when you say one thing is okay, then someone else will then entertain. If your argument is such, then your principle dictates incest would be allowed as well. Morally and principally, that would make sense, wouldn't it? But not really. Like, we're not okay with that. In fact, we want exceptions in the abortion rulings based on those issues. So I've come to realize that I don't care for the idea of a slippery slope. I acknowledge it as a fact no matter what you do. No matter what. So if you say gay marriage is okay, you will get arguments in the next degree. But just because those arguments exist doesn't mean we allow them to move beyond our moral acceptance. So while I would personally say, yeah, you can make those arguments, but no, we do have a hard line. We do recognize that's where we said enough. We get it. Two people love each other and shouldn't be denied based on gender or whatever. But now you're talking about siblings. Now you're talking about a dad and his daughter. Sorry, you're crossing a moral line. If we don't stand and defend moral lines, they erode and they cease to exist. We've got a statement from Barack Obama, who is encouraging more protests.
I don't know if there's anyone. I don't know if there's, man, the shine on this, bruh. The shine is gone. I voted for him twice. I voted for Barack Obama twice. I voted for this bruh twice. Oh, man. That's what voting is. It's dangerous when you just vote. And I didn't have great reasons. I just thought the bruh had good presence, and he did. He had that famous speech at the Democratic Convention. I thought it was a great speech. Still do to this day. He had charisma. Are those good reasons to vote for somebody? That's why when libertarians talk about, I got to share a society with these ignorant ass people, some kid who just turned 18, they don't know a damn thing about life. They were told who to hate, who not to hate. And I got to share a society with them and their vote counts the same as mine. I don't know my full thoughts on that, but how could you not look at them and wonder, like, are you going to make a voting decision for somebody based on this? Based on their ability. This was well after he was president, but this is a good example of how, for me, Obama got to be president. Charisma, swag. That's what I do.
That's what I do.
That's why his bitch ass had to take that mask off to say it. See, you had swag. That mask was holding your swag back, bruh. So this is dope. Don't get me wrong. He gets nothing but props from this from me. He came up. I don't know how many takes it took, but it still looked hard. He came up, the lefty shot, wearing the dress shoes. That's not easy. I just banged it home, just like, this is what I do. Oh, like basically all net, just look pure. Everybody watching, the camera's watching. But here's where the misstep was. That mask was holding your swag back. We couldn't hear what you had to say, bro, because you had that stupid ass mask on. See, he said it. That's what I do. And it sounded like, that's what I do. You sounded awful. And he was like, let me take this bitch ass mask off real quick.
That's what I do. Whoa.
But that's why in part, I mean, he hadn't done the shot, but it was the same type of swag. And you can understand libertarians be like, I can't share a society with you. That's how you're making voting decisions. So, what do you want me to do? I'm more wise now.
TimCast.com. Former President Barack Obama issues statement condemning overturning of Roe, calls for people to protest. Tweeting, to date, the Supreme Court not only reversed nearly 50 years of precedent, it relegated the most intensely personal decision someone can make to the whims of politicians and ideologues, attacking the essential freedoms of millions of Americans. Across the country, states have already passed bills restricting choice. I like how they call it choice. If you're looking for ways to respond, he says PPFA, USO Women, and many other groups have been sounding the alarm on this issue for years and will continue to be on the front lines of this fight. Join with activists who have been sounding the alarm on abortion access for years and act. Stand with them at local protests. Volunteer with one of their organizations. Knock on doors for a candidate you believe in. Vote on or before November 8th in every other election. Because in the end, if we want judges who will protect all and not just some of our rights, then we've got to elect officials committed to doing the same.
In a large part, I don't have a problem with anything you said there. I mean, if that's what you want to do, then I'm all for it.
This is a major play to try and save themselves from the red wave coming in November 2020. I get it. This is the play they've got to make. I'm going to add, Because this is a segment being done live, I don't normally do them live. Smash the like button, share this video wherever you can, share it with your friends or whatever. I'm going to read Super Chats. So if you haven't already, send in your Super Chats. I will be reading Super Chats in about maybe 10 or 15 minutes. This will be a slightly longer segment. I want to get into where I fear we are heading. We have this story from the Post-Millennial. DHS warns Catholic churches to prepare for night of rage. The Department of Homeland Security has...
I don't believe it. I don't believe there's any authentic, organic wave to attack churches. I just don't believe it. I think it's paid people. I don't think it's people with an agenda. I do not think there are organic people, women or otherwise, that say, this happened, let me go do this bad act. I don't see it. George Floyd... Obviously, there were paid actors like, Black Lives Matter, all that. But I think there's a lot of built up angst from the lockdowns and racial insecurities that caused people to go to the streets, not even be violent, but to cover. So many people went to the streets. It provided cover for the violence. Here, I don't see that. I don't think it's organic.
Shared intelligence with the Catholic Church about a planned night of rage that has been threatened to be unleashed by pro-abortion groups if Roe v. Wade is overturned by the Supreme Court. The document, labeled an urgent memo, was released to all clergy by the Diocese of Stockton, California, and states that a DHS agent informed that an extremist group has been calling for attacks on churches the night that the ruling is released. It is a Friday night. I want to stress this point. I covered riots, conflict, and unrest from 2011 until about 2017 or 18 when I started shifting more into podcasting. And it was because, full disclosure, I'd become too recognizable and it was impeding my ability to do the work. I can tell you this.
Just like Andy Ngo should not be in the streets. Too valuable, too recognizable, too high value of a target. You are now advanced to editor or whatever, what he does now.
When major news breaks on a Friday, that is when riots are at their worst. If the news was released on a Monday, the activists have a hard time, the extremists have a hard time gathering support throughout the week. By Wednesday, the story is old news. By Thursday, people are tired. And by Friday, people want to go party. But riots would still happen. When the news breaks on a Friday, it's fresh. People are screaming. The news cycle is dominated and the riots are worse than ever. Tomorrow, I believe, will be substantially worse, but I legitimately fear very serious acts of terror will be undertaken tonight. So please, take care of yourself, be prepared, plan ahead. Please stay safe. Be careful. If you're a church, if you're a pregnancy center, they're going to say at the Post-Millennial, while the threats are not specific, DHS agent Jesse Rangel informed the church that large groups with cells nationwide have already been discovered casing parishes, including those in...
Is this the white supremacy that the Department of Homeland Security has been telling me about? And props to Tim. This is, we got to be safe, man. This is scary stuff to see that this could happen. They've already been doing stuff. They allowed it on Twitter. Well, so they were showing that one of these places that got burned down, someone showed video of the inside of it all charred and all that. And they kind of vaguely were like, oh, this is a good thing, celebrating it. And it was allowed on Twitter.
California. As such, the diocese issued a critical notice for clergy and further instructed them to develop a plan should you see or hear anything.
Let me go to Robert Gavea. Is that how you pronounce his name? I always mess up his last name. I thought it was an L in there at first, and I think he says it Gavea. A lawyer, one of my favorite. So let's see what he has to, what legal angle aspect he brings to the table. Really like his channel. Props to him.
Not be infringed. Now those words have a little bit more.
Whoops. I was earlier doing research. I want to see his take on Roe v. Wade.
They go on to say at the Post-Millennial, while the threats are not specific, DHS agent Jesse Rangel informed the church that large groups with cells nationwide have already been discovered casing parishes, including those in California. As such, the diocese issued a critical notice for clergy.
Wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet. We're a little bit early today. My goodness, it's Friday. And we'll just sort of, do a vibe check and see how things were going. Judge Clarence Thomas, I saw.
I've kind of bit his style here. I don't show it on the channel, but I actually did the same thing he did, because in doing these videos, it's so much information out there. I got links all over the place. You got to find a way to organize it. I actually did the same thing he did. Mine's a lot more messy, but I actually did a mind master mind map. So just to show you a little bit of what I've got going on here. This is a picture inside of my brain. Oh my God, it's scary as hell. What's inside my brain here? So I got this idea from him with I was like, he did the mind map for the Sussman trial. And I was like, this is really organized. I like this a lot. I'm like, let me do one for mine. So this is actually insight to what's inside my brain. What do I want to do for my life? Public health, Soros, Smollett, election integrity, ESG, drops for the show. I want to clip a clip. Tim Pool on the show said, homie, don't play that. I got to clip that. That's a great reference. Buzz Lightyear, gas production, random stuff, instrumentals for the channel, Cope, Seethe, and Mauled. I need to be careful talking about other people's mental health if that's what's inside my brain. But I did get that idea from him, and I think it's working. I like it. I just got to keep building it out. And as you build it out, it gets harder to monitor it.
A pretty good meme of him. And then we have a funeral meme. And, we might as well, while we're here, we might as well just start off with this. Maybe this will just be sort of a celebratory, all right. So we got to make sure the volume on this one.
Robert's clouded.
I think you know where this is going.
Yes, we do know where it's going.
It's already alive and well. Brace yourselves.
Here we go.
It's the end of Roe versus Wade.
Let's go, Robert.
Celebration.
Oh, they came here first, Rob. I didn't know you were going to be so lit, man.
On this Friday, lovely Friday afternoon, the end of Roe. Party, party. Oh, yeah. All right, so that was one good meme. And I think they saw Judge Clarence Thomas out over there outside of the White House.
Oh, here
they also got a caption.
Cope, Seethe, Mauled.
Of a lot of the crying going on out there here today. Here's Judge Clarence Thomas, who's celebrating. I think they captured these from TikToks somewhere. Let's see here. Yeah, there's Judge Clarence Thomas. Yeah, there he is.
That's stupid.
So, the internet is incredibly fast, as you can tell, right? The opinion is like an hour and a half old, and there's already memes flying around. So they don't even play around there. Justice Clarence Thomas is very, very happy about it. And, of course, some of those memes are being shared over on our members community over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and they're chatting away. Shout out to Bonnie Speck, JC, the Music Man. Vienticus Prime is here. He says, I'm so tired. Why are you doing an early show? What's up? Good to see you here, V. Justice Obsessed is in the house. Black Cat Meow. Matt's mom. Shout out to Matt's mom. John Halgren is here. John Halgren, good to see you, John. Sugar Britches is in the house. Over on Rumble, we also have, Vienticus is there. Nobody's over on Rumble right now. Is it working? I don't know if it's working or not. Protect Women's Spaces. Okay, here's Protect Women's Spaces. We have Adrian F., Drew Wolf, Thunder on YouTube, Scott Nelson, Moxie McMahon. We have Sandy M's in the house. Adela Gonzalez. We have Don Blanchard, J.F. Kennedy, and Mindless Turtle. Good to see everybody. And welcome again to the show. And if you want to be a part of one of our communities, you can do that either by joining the YouTube membership. You can join over on Locals. You see the addresses here. And of course, don't forget our law firm. If you know anybody who's charged with a crime in the state of Arizona, we'd love the opportunity to help. This is the R&R Law Group. We offer free case evaluations. And shout out to Vienticus Prime and our other mods who are there to help keep the show on track. All right. And so, as we saw, we have a lot to get to. And let's take ourselves back to the early morning. Let's take ourselves back to this Friday morning. You're an abortion activist on either side. You're somebody who wants to see Roe codified and ensconced in law, or you're somebody who wants to see Roe aborted. Pun intended. And here, this is what was going on this morning. Take a look. So outside of the Supreme Court, we get some activity. And the crowd's pretty small at this moment. But this lady's here, and I think she's a pro-abortion activist. And we've got several sort of clips of her. And as we fast forward, you see the crowd starts to pick up a little bit. Now, we're just going to set some brief context, and then we're going to get to the actual moment of the decision, right? The crowd's there. People are screaming at each other, going back and forth. You're a this. No.
I don't know how this is set up. The crowd looks very small, though. It looks very sparse. I don't know if it's just the angle. I mean, it could be like seas of people and we're just seeing like where they are up close to the courthouse. But is it just me, or does that look like really, it doesn't look like there's a lot of people there.
You're that, and around and around we go. It's just good American political fun. I mean, that's what we do. We get out there, and this is free speech in action, baby. Love it. Okay, so they're here, and there is a long back and forth, and then the news spreads through the cell phones, and they go, oh, what's going on here? And you hear the crowds, and you hear some cheers, and you hear some boos, and then everybody starts to realize what had happened. So before we get there, though, let's see what else is going on. So we can sort of identify some of the groups here a little bit. They're getting together. America is not a Christian nation, someone says. Dismember Roe, someone else says. Okay, here's sort of... Now I got to handle the volume. All right, we'll turn that down here, right? Because that's a speaker literally in the... And just show you what it is. It is a really, really big document. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. But here is what the opinion looked like. Okay, the New York Times gave us this graphic today. They say how the court split in the 6-3 ruling overturning Roe versus Wade. 6 conservative judges on top. Amy Coney Barrett, of course, is the newest addition to the court, joined by Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. These 3 judges right here in the middle, those are all Trump appointees. My goodness, talk about Donald Trump leaving sort of a lasting legacy on the court. Oh, that must make this just even that much worse, right? It's Trump.
I hate to bring down the energy, but could you imagine if Hillary Clinton won in 2016? I don't want to be too alarmist, but I mean, my first thought, honestly, I know this is an extreme thought and not true, but my first thought is we'd be in the gulags right now. Karen, we'd be in the gulags. We'd be sharing stuff about our family and just like those in J6. Like, that's how crazy it would be. I think it would be that crazy. Everybody would have a needle in their arm without questions. You'd be hunted down. You would not be able to participate unless you lived in the mountains, literally off grid somewhere. They'd probably be hunting you down right now. If Hillary Clinton were able to appoint the 3 justices. So this whole thing would be flipped 6-3. And then who knows what the energy would do to flip Roberts. Roberts is he's, I don't think he's very principled as a justice. Who knows what that would have done to him. Thomas and Alito are solid, but I think you could flip it. If Hillary would have won, I would love to see an alternate universe. What would be different? Maybe not much would be different, but it's a crazy thought to think about, though.
Trump's basically responsible for all this. And so Gorsuch, Barrett, and Kavanaugh, they're on the court majority, joined by Alito, Thomas, and Roberts, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Breyer down there in the dissent. And the summary comes over from the SCOTUS blog. And so I'll hit this one, and then I'll just kind of show you the opinion. But it says the decision was written by Judge Alito. We already talked about some of this since it did leak. Very anticipated ruling. The vote to overturn Roe was 5-4, and they overturned, 3 liberal judges wrote dissents. The decision came in Dobbs. It was a challenge. So the original case was a 2018 Mississippi law bans virtually all abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. Law carved out exceptions for medical emergency and in cases of severe fetal abnormality, but did not make cases or exceptions for cases involving rape or incest. Never went into effect. It was blocked by the Court of Appeals. And then it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the opinion is...
I don't know how you can't think that's not authoritarianism. So you're saying you don't even make exceptions for those cases? I mean, that's just straight authority. There's no other way to describe that.
Is like I said, very large because of the dissent and the concurrence, but we can see it is here. And as usual, they gave us a syllabus, and we spent some time previously. Actually, let me pull it up on this.
Okay, I'm going to end there because I think I'll have to review. This is all stuff I would do on my own without recording, so I probably can take that offline and dig into it deeper. I love his setup, man. I gotta look at I like his setup. Gosh, that's really good how he has that, because this screen isn't. This is like StreamYard. StreamYard is like streaming for dummies. I think, not again. A lot of people use StreamYard, but it's like the most easy thing to do. But I might want to try a new format, practice that, and a new streaming OBS app, because I really like how he has it set up there. It's really nice how he has it divided. And then he has his mind map. That's good stuff. He's great. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. I think that's it for it. I will have some other videos coming out. Hopefully I'll have time to put those together. I'll be using my mind map to put those together. But everybody, hopefully if I don't chat with everybody, have a good weekend. Have fun with your family. Hopefully do some things to take your mind away from this stuff. We're going to go to the Children's Museum by us. We have not gone since the pandemic. One of the good things about these museums is they are now doing it by appointment. So it's good. When you're going in, it's not going to be too crowded. I don't know if that's good for business, but hopefully they have enough money to keep these museums open and also just manage who's coming in. I really like it a lot. So Karen, food lover, others, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate it. Take care.